welcome to episode 109 of Random Encounter, the RPG Fan Podcast. I'm your host, Robert Steinman, Pale Robbie on the boards. Joining me today is... I don't have anything for you, Derek. Derek,
You never do.
How about Derek Bravely Second Heemsbergen?
I like it. You even did the voice for me.
I try.
Thanks. I'm Derek Heemsbergen, everyone on the boards. I've been playing a lot of Bravely Second because I recently had a wisdom tooth pulled, and it was excruciating. Like, I know a lot of people have their wisdom teeth pulled, and they're like, oh, it wasn't that bad. I was out of commission for like a day or two. I only had one pulled, mind you, but it was like the worst thing ever.
Wait,
some of the worst pain.
I've definitely heard it's worse if you're older. Not old, but like older. Like, because I had mine out when I was 16 and it wasn't bad. And 2 of them weren't even in yet. I had all 4 out and it wasn't bad. But then my brother had his out at like 24 and he was miserable.
So it was
Yeah,
bad.
I had to get one removed. I guess it was around 2 years ago, so I was 27 or 28, and it just to remove one, it took them like an hour and 45 minutes. It was miserable.
God.
Yeah.
So screw wisdom teeth forever. And the only reason why I'm bringing that up is not to have a pity party, even though it was awful and you should feel bad for me. I was on painkillers and I played a lot of Bravely Second.
Cool,
And that
cool.
was the only highlight of the experience.
If they're called wisdom teeth, why do we have to get them pulled out?
So, moving on, we also have Mike. I also like Dragon Quest IV Solosi.
Yes, that's me. I'm Monsoon on the boards, and I also really like Dragon Quest IV, even though they added the stupid Russian accents to Elena's town. I never really got that.
Oh my god, that game is really not pleasant to read.
No, it's like trying to read like the moles in the old Redwall books. It's just these stupid accents that it's like solving a puzzle just trying to understand what they're saying.
I have to read it out loud. I have to read it out loud, or else I just get really confused.
Yeah. And it's not much better than Ragnar's Town, which I think are supposed to be Scottish accents, but again, just look like a lot of strange apostrophes.
We have to go after the wee barons. What? Like, oh my god. I mean, it works so well in Dragon Quest VIII because they're all voiced. So it sounds amazing in Dragon Quest VIII, but here it's just like...
Yeah.
I feel like
deciphering bad accents is not fun.
It will still never be as bad as Chrono Cross and trying to understand French. Like, oh my god. Oh,
it was actually easier to read Magnolia speaking French in Bravely Second than understanding those accents in Dragon Quest IV.
Ooh, boy. And then finally we have Steven. I'm still in Japan, Myrink.
That's all accurate.
That is all. Are you still doing okay? You drinking your coffee this morning? It's very early for you right now.
Well, I'm about halfway through, so I'm about 50%, I would say.
I'm going to mail you some Death Wish coffee. This episode of RPG Fan brought to you by Death Wish Coffee.
Death Wish coffee.
We should definitely...
Hard.
I'm not kidding when I... Like, it is fantastic because it tastes good. It's not just a caffeine rush that makes you feel like you could fight the bear from The Revenant. It's also like, it tastes really, really good.
Oh my god, spoilers. I haven't seen The Revenant.
Yeah, I didn't know there was a bear.
I didn't know he gets
nominated that bear for Best Supporting Actress.
It would have been better if The Revenant had been a good movie, but that's neither here nor there. Okay, that's not fair. It was okay.
I heard it's pretty good.
It was okay, and it's also Leonardo DiCaprio getting the makeup Oscar. Like, he should have gotten it for any number of other roles, and they gave it to him.
Just like how Scorsese won his Oscar for Departed and not for Goodfellas or Raging Bull or all of his other good stuff.
See, this is why I keep Mike on the... See, Mike is like the yin to Steven's yang. Yeah. He just agrees with me. That's what I love.
Okay. Oh, I really want to see it. I've heard nothing but good things.
Well, if you hated Batman versus Superman, make a list of all the things you hated. This movie did them better.
I need to see Civil War. I'm actually more excited to see Civil War after Batman v Superman because of how bad that movie was. But we're not a video game podcast. We're not a movie podcast. We're not a movie podcast. We are a video game podcast, and we have lots of video games to talk about this week, including a lot of really exciting news. Shin Megami Tensei 4 Apocalypse. What? Here we go.
It has awesome music.
Oh, I'm excited.
There's literally a character named Revenant in Bravely Second. So it all comes together.
Segue.
He or she fight a bear?
No, he is the ghost of a child trapped in a suit of armor, but never mind.
So let's talk about Bravely Second. So I think, having only played the demo for Bravely Default, I think my only question to everybody based on the news and the reviews for the original game is, did they fix the grinding?
Yeah.
Okay.
No.
What kind of grinding, though, do you mean? Like, did they
I guess
The repetitiveness of the story
yes,
structure.
the fact that you have to do the same thing like 3 or 4 times.
That's what I
Yeah,
thought.
okay. Right. They did fix that. In Bravely Default, you play through one chapter. Okay, let me slow down. You play through chapters 1 through 4 like a normal RPG, and then chapters 5 through 8 are repeating the events of 1 through 4 in a faster way, and it sucks. I adore that game, and I find that design decision pretty indefensible, and it was basically a deal breaker for a lot of people playing it. And I mean, I still loved it, but I totally get it when people hated that aspect of it. Bravely Second does not completely abandon the idea of redoing and repeating certain things, but it's much, much better.
I would agree with that wholeheartedly. That's one of the main reasons why I fell out of, I wouldn't even say love because I never really loved it. I fell out of like with Bravely Default so hard. But I loved everything that it was doing in terms of the job system because job systems are a lot of fun when done well. See Final Fantasy 5, 11, 3, 14, and many other games that aren't Final Fantasy. But yeah, I just felt like it was so abusive of the player's goodwill. Like it disrespected your time to such an incredibly awful degree. Like why it just doesn't make sense to me to
and the characters it's self-aware of what it's doing. Like there is I'm not saying it's a good reason, but there is a justification for why they do that, and the players are like Bill Murray in Groundhog Day. It's like, why am I doing this over and over? What's wrong? There's something wrong here.
I read an interesting take on that. There was an article, and I feel bad because I can't remember who wrote it or where I even saw it. But there was somebody.
I read that one.
Yeah, the article about like they think that the frustrating nature of Bravely Default's latter half is to actually get the player into the same mindset as the characters, which is like we're frustrated that we're stuck in a time loop, which is like kind of a stretch. I think that's an interesting idea, like just to discuss, but I don't really think that that's like.
Well, I mean, I get that. I mean, a lot of movies deliberately try to disgust or make the viewer uncomfortable, and that doesn't make me like it more. That makes me understand why it's doing it, but it doesn't make me like it. And for Bravely Default to do that, I basically agree with you. It's disrespectful of the player, even though they have their reasons for exactly why they're doing it. But regardless of how much you like or dislike that part of Bravely Default, I think that it's made a lot better in Bravely Second. Like Bravely Second is a much more forgiving way of doing that repetition thing.
Yeah, this is going to seem very shallow because I had the same issue with the first one where I really liked it, and then I got sort of tired of the grindiness and also the awful characters, which I think the last time we talked about that game, I liked them, and I don't anymore. They're stupid. I'm
an unabashed Ring a Bell hater. I think he's one of the worst characters I've seen in an RPG in such a long time. And normally I can be a little bit more ambivalent about some characters, but I think that dude is trash.
Actually, I've Ring a Bell's annoying, but I actually hated Agnes more by the end because
she's annoying too.
Yeah, like the whole time, like she's this Nadeshiko playing the victim character that I just was completely sick of by the end.
Well, thankfully, Bravely Second, as I talked about this when we discussed the demo for Bravely Second, is that it cuts the cast from the first game in half and gives us the good half.
So my shallow comment is this: I hear everything about the game is better, but the soundtrack is way worse. Does it play better in the game? Because the music is really bland in the soundtrack.
Yeah. No, I agree, and I had the soundtrack several months before the game came out in the United States, and I did not like the soundtrack listening to it as a CD. It's a little better with in-game context, and it does help that the game retains a lot of Bravely Default's soundtrack as well. Like, it has you go back to, I think, all of the major towns from Bravely Default, and all of the town themes are still there. And certain boss fights have boss music from Bravely Default. And I agree. I basically think that Bravely Second's music is a little better in context than standalone, but it's not the mind blow that the soundtrack to Bravely Default was. I adored the Bravely Default soundtrack, and I don't
totally.
I don't. And the Bravely Second soundtrack is fine, but not nearly at the level of Revo's work on Bravely Default.
It's most definitely like a decent soundtrack, a decent to good soundtrack. It's just we got spoiled by Bravely Default's incredible music, and especially like having beaten the game, I don't think that any of the final boss or final area music was anywhere near as memorable as Bravely Default. In fact, the
Yeah,
entire ending sequence of Bravely Second, I think, isn't as good. I mean, that's all I really say about it. But
it's well, okay. I don't want to spoil anything either. But in Bravely Default, they break the fourth wall and become self-aware as a game with in a way with its ending. And Bravely Second does a similar thing that is not the same as Bravely Default. I thought it was cool, but not the best part of the game, which is the job system, of course.
yeah, the jobs return in this game. There were 18 in the previous game. There are 30 in this one. There
Not
are
not quite. It no well no There was 24 in default. Then they removed
24.
6. Yeah, they removed 6 and add 12. So now it's 30.
Okay, yeah. All right. Yeah, I
Mhm.
was wondering why it seemed like there were more than the original. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
There are 30 jobs in this one, and I was wrong. It's just,
Sorry,
like you said,
sorry about that.
that's okay. They did cut. No, I want to be accurate. They cut some of them. The ones that they cut, I don't really miss that much because they were kind of variants of other classes that fulfill similar niches. And in this one, like for example, one of the classes that was cut was the Mystic Knight, which was like a
Mhm.
sword enchanter that could enchant their swords with elements. And now we have Hawkeye, which uses a gun to do similar things. So and it functions a bit differently overall, but it still has that ability. Yeah, I think the jobs are really fun this time around. It would have been easy for them to include kind of throwaway new classes that don't really do anything novel, but there's some cool stuff. There's like Guardian is a class that utilizes possession as a mechanic, so you can possess either other party members, enemies, or you can have other party members possess you, and it's sort of like it combines HP and MP pools to give you more strength, and you can utilize this resource that they have called Soul Power to do things like unleash
Yeah.
attacks on enemies.
The soul power thing, it almost is like you're getting a super meter in a fighting game or something, because it grows as you take damage and lets you unleash powerful attacks. It's Guardian's a lot of fun, and it's one of the tankiest classes in the game. So I would do things like give it knight skills so it could equip 2 shields and just be this unkillable tank, and then have my patissier decorate my Guardian so that enemies would always attack it, and let my mages and Hawkeyes and fencers attack on their own. The interplay between jobs is as good as ever, and it's a super fun class system to play around with.
I was constantly switching out jobs and trying new combos of stuff, and it almost universally worked for me. Like I felt like in Bravely Default, I know that there were a lot of the same classes, so this may have just been something that I could chalk up to my own, I don't know, inexpertise. But in Bravely Default, I would often feel like there was probably one character in my party who didn't necessarily jive with the rest in terms of strategy. Like I wasn't layering skills or abilities well enough for me to have everything mesh super well. And in second, it was constantly like I just found ways to make stuff work. Like you said, the patissier is another new class that decorates pastries in the heat of battle that do various things like enfeebling enemies, making them weak against elements, poisoning, or removing their resistances to things, or like making less defense, all that kind of stuff. So that's a fun class. You can combine that. You can do like the element weakening pastries and combine that with a Hawkeye's elemental attacks. You can do stuff like the new wizard class is basically what you get as your black mage replacement early in the game. Black mage exists too, but that's a super cool class. It lets you do spell crafting, which is you can alter any spell into a different I don't know, like format for that spell. So you have like your generic elements like fire, water, whatever. And I can say, oh, I want to make that into a hammer spell that does physical damage. I want to make that into a mist that hits the enemy at the start of every turn. And you can combine that spellcraft ability with other classes stuff too. So like I had a summoner character who had this really, really powerful healing spell. It was a Amaterasu summon. And so I had it a mist. So like at the beginning of every turn, I would just get like 9,000 health back for full party. And then I could use Time Mage's meteor spell and cast that as a rain so that it would hit 4 times. Like it works so well, and it's not half-assed. Like all of these abilities play off of each other in really cool, interesting ways. And I mean, the job system in combat, I think for me, besides the soundtrack, was the best part of the first game and the reason why I cared about it. And in the second one, I get to enjoy all of that with like a cast that doesn't make me hate them, and a story that's more respectful of my time as a player.
Yeah, that seems to be the case. Like, at first, I sort of tolerated like Ring a Bell in the first one, and like as time went on, it's one of those things where you can tolerate it at first, and then after having to repeat stuff, it's like, all right, this guy sucks. He needs to stop. And like the cat, like it's sort of a pattern that I don't like in anime too, of like we must rely on a stereotype. Like there has to be a pervy character and there has to be a tsundere. Of course there does, because that's how we tell stories now. And if you don't do anything to meaningfully like elaborate on that, or in Ring a Bell's case, you punch people in the face with it until they hate him and want him to just disappear forever. I just wanted to yell at Ring a Bell. But
But I
anyways,
feel like people love him though. Like anytime I bring this up in a public forum, like on Twitter or whatever, I'd be like, everything was great. Well, not everything, but so much was great, but I hate Ring a Bell. And I try not to be too vocal about that kind of stuff because I don't want to like crap on other people's enjoyment. But anytime I bring it up, I feel like people rush to his defense and they're like, but he's so noble in the end. Like, no, screw that. He's an annoying
yeah,
dick.
he's
for like
he's noble in the way
75%
a guy
of the
tips
game.
he's noble in the way a guy tips his fedora at you and goes,
Milady.
my person.
Yeah.
Well, Ring a Bell's in Bravely Second for about 10 minutes, which I think is the exact right amount of Ring a Bell.
I agree. But
Yeah.
even in that 10 minutes, I was like, God damn it, Ring a Bell.
It's
Get
like,
outta here.
can I press A any faster? Just skip through all his dialogue.
Does the skeevy old man come back?
No, thank God.
No,
Sweet.
his class is one of the 6 jobs that is not in this game, and I think they mention him like, oh, what's he up to? But he does not show up at all.
Thank God.
Oh.
And it also helps. I mean, like Agnes and Ring a Bell, I thought were the 2 most annoying of Bravely Default, but the 2 new ones that they replace him with, Magnolia and You, I think are they're fun. They're definite improvements over those 2. I mean, they have a little romance angle between them for most of the game, and it's cute, but it's not they don't really hit you over the head with it too hard.
Is it a spoiler to ask if there are only 4 party members?
You have 4 people in battle with you.
Fair enough. That's a
You
good
start the
response.
game. You start the game with if you played the demo.
I'm
as
actually
well.
downloading it now.
Okay, yeah, you have the 3 Cavaliers. So Nikolai, Jan, and you are the starting party, that's who you play as in the demo as well. And then it'll transition into the 4 final members later.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah,
your party for 95% of the game is you, Tiz, Dia, and Magnolia.
Yeah, and I wouldn't even say that Bravely Second story is like mind-blowingly awesome. It's I would actually say that in some ways it's not as good as Bravely Default's just because of the really cool meta-narrative stuff that Default does that I think surpasses the meta-narrative stuff in Second. But it was enjoyable. I enjoyed playing that game all the way through, and there was never a point where I reached that fatigue where I was like, all right, I'm ready for this to end. Because I do get that way sometimes, and I kind of hate it, but I know that I have a tendency to, when I near the end of games, I kind of want to charge headlong to the end and see the ending because I need narrative closure. So with Bravely Second, I never really got to that point where I was just I never mash it through dialogue, but where I was just like, oh, I don't care, hurry, go, 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 go. And I think that may be in part because I anticipated some stuff to repeat a la Bravely Default. Like I knew that when they said it's the final battle, I was like, we are in chapter 4. You need to calm down. It is not the final battle. So yeah, it's
this is not your first RPG.
right. Yeah, it's
This is not my first medieval adventure.
not exactly. It's not so much a drastic departure from Bravely Default, but I think that it makes a case for the importance of attention to detail. I mean, there are just the little things like I talked about when we were discussing the demo, the mechanic that lets you repeat consecutive battles for larger rewards. That's such a big deal to me. I made so much use of that and I loved it. It made grinding way more fun. And the fact that the characters are not insufferable, in my opinion, makes a big difference.
Yeah,
Yeah. It's like the same it's like the same game, but with just all the crap I didn't like cut out.
How's the localization?
It's good.
the local it is
Talk about
good.
food a lot.
God, they have so many conversations about food, especially when you're in the tent and like one of them's cooking and you basically hear about the cooking skills
Yeah.
and the food preferences of every character.
It's
Oh,
very
well, I'm
tales of like they
Yeah,
really
and-
want to talk about food all the time.
And you, as in the character you, not the people I'm speaking
Not
to
me.
right now, you. He really, really likes gravy.
Oh my god.
And the way that like a World of Warcraft paladin will say "for the glory" all the time, he will say "for the gravy"
Or the gravy.
all the
Yeah,
time,
that all the
and
time.
it's weird.
It is
But
good. Did you see the thing I posted on Twitter?
oh, I'm not I'm not sure I remember. I'll find it later.
Um,
But yeah, I think what Derek was saying before, how even though Bravely Second does a lot of the same things Default does, he finds it much more tolerable. I think part of it is that it never really wears out its welcome, because Bravely Default is long. Like I think my play clock on that thing was 80 hours plus, but for Bravely Second it was only around 50 hours. So it is a more streamlined experience than Bravely Default, with fewer annoying parts, and that just makes it go by much more quickly, and still, and it has the same strengths as Bravely Default does, but with a lot of the bad parts cut out. So if you liked Bravely Default but got really annoyed by its ending, but still had a lot to like about the core gameplay of Bravely Default, then second, I would wholeheartedly recommend Bravely Second. But if you just didn't like Bravely Default from minute one, then you probably still won't like Bravely Second.
yeah. It's a better version of the first one with not so better music. IMO.
Cool.
Sacrifices we make, I guess.
Well,
I'll
not to
just
be
play the other soundtrack on iTunes. Yeah.
not to be too disruptive, but we now have Jesse, attorney at law Wu, has decided to join us. Jesse, how you doing, sir?
Doing well. Someone stole my objection.
Can we do like a Smash Brothers?
That would have been
Jesse disbars the competition.
that would have been so good if he just came in and did that. Oh, okay. Well, it's neither here nor there. Okay. All right. Moving on. Jesse, we're glad to have you here.
I want to cross-examine the parrot, Your Honor.
Oh, Jesus. This is going to get really awkward really fast. So we just got done talking about Bravely Second.
References.
You need to play more Ace Attorney. We need to... We just got done talking about Bravely Second, and everybody seems to be very positive on it right now. Sounds like a better game, but maybe not as good of a story as Bravely Default is kind of the vibe that I was getting from you guys.
Yeah, it's not. I mean, and even then, it depends on what you qualify that as, like, better story. Yeah, I don't think it's like a perfect game by any means, but it worked for me where the first one didn't, and I was really glad to see the adjustment that they made in it, because for me it's like a solid, I don't know, I'd say it's a 8.5, like an 8 maybe.
I think 85 is literally the score I gave it for the review, and yeah, I basically just use it as an excuse to tinker around with that awesome job system for another 50 hours.
For sure, yeah. I can't believe I put 50 hours into it, and as quickly as I did too, because painkillers, man. I don't know where the time goes.
Painkillers are awesome.
People get addicted to those, Rob. They have to go to treatment for it.
I don't know what you're talking about. I did pull my back out.
That's how you get more OxyContin.
I pulled my back out something fierce the other day. Somebody decided to put a broken chair in the hallway, and while I was waiting to talk to a colleague, I sat and said broken chair, and like devastated my back, and that was followed by a stream of obscenities up and down the hall going like, who sets up a broken chair? Why would you do that? So I kind of hated everybody.
You're that old guy that yells at all the kids.
Yeah, I know, and it was funny because my colleague was turning 40 and I'm 31, and I felt like I was 50. Like, I was just like, wow, my back is in a lot of pain. Jackie had to go out and get one of those heating pads, and it was the upper part of my back, so when she wrapped it around me, it was like I was walking around with a bra, and I had limited mobility. It was just, it was a bad day. It was a bad day. But Bear Aspirin will take away your back problems. So now we got Bear Aspirin that we need to get money from. Death Wish Coffee we need to get money from. Okay, we're just going to pimp this site out. Something fierce. Okay.
Sorry, my back was hurting. I just got back from taking some Bayer aspirin.
Well done. And Mike, you've also been playing a little bit of The World Ends With You. You know, that game with zippers that I hate.
Yeah, I mean, you look at the art of the characters in that game, and it's a Tetsuya Nomura nightmare. And it's set in Akihabara, or whatever, like that trendy part of downtown Tokyo, and it wears that sort of aesthetic on its sleeve, which is part of why I don't like it as much as I wish I did. I'm currently playing that game for Retro Encounter, our game club podcast thing, alongside Josh Curry, and it's that
Josh, I hate everything, Curry.
Yeah, he hates a lot of things, but he doesn't hate this. Unusually on this version of the podcast, like he is the shoulder angel and I'm the shoulder devil with this game.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I am not
everything he plays. He's like what people think.
Yeah, no, basically he's trying to talk me into liking this game, and I tried playing it years ago and didn't like it, and I'm giving it a second chance for the podcast. So right now I'm very early on in week 3, which I understand that there's like 3 weeks in the game and then a final boss. And I still don't love it. Like when you finally get like 15 badges and can tinker around and your eyes get used to darting from the top to bottom screen like you're watching a game of Pong sideways. It's it gets better, but it has a bad first impression, and I still think that the art is dumb because I don't like buttons and zippers as much as Japanese teenagers.
They don't like.
So yeah, I know Bob doesn't want me to talk about this game for long, so we can end it here. But hopefully we'll have those episodes up of Retro Encounter soon.
It's not that I hated that game. Okay, that is exactly. I mean, no. I gave it a shot. Like, I kind of dug the storyline. Like, again, I love 999. I love VLR. Like, I love that kind of, teenagers in the middle of some kind of game where life is on the line. Which, as a teacher, that's probably not a good thing. But like that game,
you're like reading about Battle Royale and then looking at your students.
I really loved reading Battle Royale. That was a really awesome book to read, and I love the movie, but it was just like I could not understand that game at all. It just bewildered me to a point of just like I feel like my eyes are bleeding and I don't want to. This kind of gets to something we're going to talk about with a few games when well, we might as well just do the segue right now. If a game doesn't do a good job of explaining itself, like I can kind of meet it somewhere in. But I had Demon Souls, and Demon Souls was a little unfortunate because we got it so late that, of course, the internet had kind of taken away all the ambiguity, and I could look on wikis and stuff and make sense of things. But I agree with you, Steven. I totally agree with you that like, for a newcomer to the Souls games and not having any source of information, that's a lot to take in. Wouldn't argue the point. Then there's Neo, which... Wow.
I thought you were going to talk about a different game with Japanese teenagers murdering.
No, we'll get to Japanese teenagers murdering each other in a couple seconds. But Neo is the Team Ninja developed Souls / Onimusha / Diablo clone that is coming out to the PlayStation 4 exclusively. There's an alpha demo available for everybody to play. So I was kind of like, should I even write a preview for this, because you can play it and make your own decisions.
Well, not everyone. There's also the audience that doesn't have a PS4,
Sure. So I played this demo, and I knew something was kind of amiss when the first enemy in the game like hit me one time and practically killed me. And I was like, huh. Okay. And so I had to get used to the fact that this is much more of an RPG than the Souls games. Like, equipment really, really matters in this game. The main character, William, your Asian, European descendant samurai who, if this game was being made by white people, would we suddenly be saying that they are whitewashing a samurai? Is it okay because it's being developed by Team Ninja?
I'm not entirely sure I want to jump into that conversation.
I'm just saying, like, would this be the whitewashing argument that I've been hearing about everything right now, but because Team Ninja did it, it's okay?
Well, Team Ninja sucks.
I'm not sure anybody's making that argument, actually.
No, I actually haven't, but I guess I'm just wondering, would there be outrage, and maybe I'm again looking for outrage where there is none.
As the only Asian person on this podcast.
And William's in your name, too.
That's true. That's
all right.
It's practically about me.
I thought it was going to be more like Tom Cruise in The Last Samurai, but this is better.
What do you think, Jesse?
Yes, they do get a pass probably because it's an Asian company, and they're like, Japanese seem to have like this thing about like, they want to have like a white looking character, but they still want to connect it to Japanese culture, so they'll just say like, oh, they're half Asian, half Japanese, half American, or whatever. Although, very rarely do Hapa people have blonde hair, right? Like, I don't think I've ever seen one.
I wouldn't know.
It's just, yeah.
Well, from what I understand, also because I was curious about that, I think it's actually based on a historical figure. I think it's based on like William Adams or something. I'm not familiar with it, but from what I understand, Team Ninja said that he is based on like a real person, and that's why he's the character you play as.
Right. I don't.
Same guy that was in Heroes.
I don't want to cast stones. I just found it to be like a little awkward. Also, the fact the guy looks exactly like Geralt, and like the 8-4 guys have already been up and down on that.
He's literally Geralt.
He shows up in a white tunic and a sword, and I was like, so he's Geralt, is what you're telling me. So like beginning part of this game, like you are just getting obliterated until you pick up a couple pieces of armor and make yourself a little bit stronger, and it's like,
really think so though? Like.
Dude, like I was expecting to take at least one hit and my entire health bar was gone. And
so, like, I don't want to cut your point off, but I just want to, like, so when I first started playing, basically I didn't know anything about the game at all. I just knew that you told me it was terrible. And so the first thing I did was summon another player's corpse, and I got murdered. And then I did it about 20 times, and I was like, I don't think I'm supposed to be doing this. So I went and fought enemies, and maybe it's because I fought corpses who can kill you in literally one hit.
I think that's what happened.
But the enemies don't really hit. Like, they hit about 2 or 3 times, but I also feel like part of it is that this game appears to play like Dark Souls, but in fact is very different. Like,
yes.
If you try to play it like Dark Souls, like I did at first, you're just going to get murdered because you can't block everything, because if you run out of stamina, you go into that stun mode and the enemy immediately murders you.
Yeah, I agree with you. It looks like a Souls game. It has the key meter, which is basically endurance, your stamina meter. You move around the character sort of like a Souls game when you lock on, and we're going to talk about that a little bit because that needs to change if I'm even going to try playing this game again. But it isn't a Souls game. Like, the animations don't... It's more combo driven. It's not as animation driven. It doesn't really seem like you have invincibility frames when you're rolling around. Like, if you roll through an enemy's attack, it will still hit you, so you have to use blocking and dodging in order to be effective. And once I, like, fought the first enemy a few times, I started to get like, oh, okay, I've kind of figured out a rhythm to this game. I got it. And it's interesting because I think this game really excels in the one-on-one combat. Like, this game is all about stamina management. It's actually very, very harsh. Like Steven said, if you run out of stamina, you enter into a staggered state for like 3 seconds. That is basically death. Like, if you...
it's pretty much death. And, like, a big part of that one-on-one combat is, like, you are supposed to be watching your enemy. You have your 3 stances, like... And if you make a mistake, you die. And to an extent, I think that could be a learning curve. It could also be Team Ninja BS because Team Ninja sucks. But
I appreciate that.
Like what I found compelling about that one-on-one combat was, like, in the first few fights alone, like, the game doesn't tell you until you get the tooltip as to what each stance is good for. But, like, the mid stance is the reaction stance. Like, an enemy attacks you, you can block and then react. Whereas the high stance rewards you for sort of reading your enemy's attack and hitting them. And the low stance is sort of a little more safe.
I found the low stance, though, like, consistently, I would hit the enemy one time and it would push them out of my range, so I couldn't combo it well. Like, I really didn't like the low stance. That really didn't feel right.
Well, so the low stance I found good if you had multiple enemies because it keeps them away from you. Because, like, when you fight one enemy, you can initiate a chain. But if you have multiples, you really don't want them all to be hitting you at once. Like, you want to stun 1 or 2 of them. So that's what I mean when I say, like, I definitely get where you're coming from. And I don't, because the game could be unbalanced being an alpha.
Sure.
Like, I definitely get where you're coming from with that. I might even end up agreeing. For me, it seems like the game, because it has the appearance of a Souls title, I don't know. For me, subconsciously, I was like, all right, well, I got to start playing this like Dark Souls. I better start circle strafing this guy and rolling around him, and then they do a sweep attack and stab you in the face and you die.
Mm-hmm.
So like I do really wonder to what extent that's going to be. This is because it's definitely a harder game. Like I feel like the particularly Namco Bandai, which I'm shaking my fist at them for doing this, is marketing Dark Souls as this impossible game where you just die a lot, and the Souls games are just games where you have to play them carefully. This is a game. This is the game that Namco Bandai thinks they're making.
Yes, I mean this game.
This is the game where like you get ganked by like a farmer and you die.
Yeah, I died more in my 3 hours of demo time with this game than the entire run of Dark Souls 3.
Yeah,
like I got obliterated in this game.
Like I told you straight up, I started the game. You know the first rocks on the beach that you walk past?
Yeah, you fell into the ocean, didn't you?
No, I didn't fall. I didn't fall in the ocean. But like the first like dead player I saw, I was like, oh, of course I'm gonna summon this guy and kill him and get his souls and go level up some more. No, I died like 20 straight times because I'm stubborn, and I was like, I can beat this guy. And then I finally beat one. And I was like, all right, I'm gonna go fight these bandits.
And by then you had kind of gotten used to the combat system. And again, the game has, it's hard to tell in a demo if the game has an exceptional amount of depth or if it's unbalanced or if it's needlessly complicated. Like, I don't know the answer to any of those questions. What I do know is that the one-on-one combat in open spaces is what the game is doing well, but then the game is insisting on putting me into like, here's 3 guys running straight at you and you're just screwed, or you're in a small room and the camera flips out, or when you get to the rooftop area, like just F that whole area. Like just F it.
Think I wonder how much of that is balancing though.
Could be.
Because I agree, like the rooftop area is like, oh, I got hit and I'm dead.
Like
because,
you just
like when you fight.
Ugh.
Well, because I was reading online and this guy who plays a lot of Monster Hunter on his YouTube channel was streaming it for his fans, and like he's really into like these kinds of games like Monster Hunter and Dark Souls and such. And he was talking about how he was trying to play it like Dark Souls, like, you know, blocking carefully. And how when you have multiple enemies, blocking is not really an option because you lose so much stamina from a block, at least early in the game, that if 3 enemies attack you at once, the first one's going to break your guard, the second one's going to stun you, and the third one's going to gut you with a super attack.
Yeah, and then you're dead. Yeah, I get that.
So, like, you know, again, I totally with you. I died a lot in those sequences too. So I don't know to what extent it's bad balance, which again, it's an alpha demo, but versus, you know, like, all right, this is just cheap. Like, I don't feel like what I played was not fixable via some balancing. Or I guess it could also be, like you said, more RPG than Dark Souls, although I don't know that I agree with that yet or not. But it could also be that when you level up a little bit more, suddenly you're able to stand toe-to-toe, which would sort of go to odds with their like frame-perfect battle system they appear to be going for.
And go ahead, Jesse.
Well, I'm just curious, like, since we're making all these comparisons to Dark Souls, how punishing is it when you die?
Not really.
No, okay. So that's actually funny. It is not punishing at all when you die because you can go recover your souls. Your is it Armida? Whatever it is, like
Armida.
Okay. But what it is punishing on, and this is a balancing thing purely, but I really hope they get the message. The weapon durability in this game can just go to hell. Like within a couple battles, your weapons are just like, apparently these swords are made out of butter and tinfoil, and like after you fight with them a few times, they go to hell, and then you have to go to this like really bad Diablo style loot system of, I now have 37 swords, and each one has marginal increases in stats, and now I need to compare all of these swords and re-equip my swords, and it's like, why does this game have a Diablo loot system? I don't understand why.
Well, I don't mind that, but this flashes me back to when we talked about Diablo with John, and John said he hated just looking for the green arrows.
Yeah, and that's what this game is. This game is find the green arrows.
Well, I agree that you get a lot of stuff, and their menu system definitely does need work. But on the other hand, I don't personally think that's a bad thing of getting a lot of stuff on its own, because I like getting a lot of loot, especially in a game that appears to reward that sort of thing. And again, it's sort of like Dark Souls 1. You have a million weapons in Dark Souls 1, and the menu system in that game is a little more sensical, but there are definitely people who would argue that same problem is present in Dark Souls 1.
Right. And again, it's a demo. I'm not trying to damn the game right now, but like and they're apparently taking feedback on it, much the same way Final Fantasy 15 did. So I think that's a real positive. But like the camera system, the lock-on system is garbage. Like straight up, if you're fighting more than one enemy and you try to lock on and like move the cursor around, it just doesn't work. And also, when you're, and this gets to what Steven's saying, that this isn't really a Souls game. When you're locked onto an enemy, if you try to like move backward, like, oh, I'm going to back up, if you press the analog stick too far, like if you press it just a little bit, he'll back up slowly. If you press it too far, he'll just turn his back and start walking in the opposite direction. That will get you hit because you're like, all of a sudden you're just pointing your back at the enemy. And that got me like, that messed me up on the first boss fight in this, but when I was like, wow, I'm blocking and now suddenly I'm not. And
part of it is also, I mean, the way they want you to fight is facing the enemy and with your guard up like that.
Sure.
I actually had a different experience. I found that the system worked really well for me. Like if I wanted to stand my guard, I could, and then as soon as I needed to run, I could quickly turn around. Like I guess I'm not sure like what your precise issue with it was, because I felt like when you were locked onto it, at least with one enemy, if you block, the auto facing I thought was really good. And then all you have to do to really run in any free direction is just put your guard down. And, like, you can quickly hop with the dodge thing.
Right, but you also want to keep your guard down because you recover stamina faster. So when I'm keeping my guard down, but I still want to move a little bit to recover some stamina, which is like Dark Souls 101, like always be moving, ABM, always be moving. Like that's just
the thing, though. Dark Souls 101 doesn't work here.
Well, true, but then the camera starts getting screwy when all of a sudden it decides to put William right front and center, and I can't see the enemy anymore and whether or not he's attacking me because Team Ninja sucks and Team Ninja has never had a good camera system. And this
I agree with
this camera, when this camera's good, everything's fine. But when it's like, hey, we're gonna put William in a position where now you can't see what you're fighting, it's like, oh, that's great. So I don't know. I see promise in this game, but if the best thing this game is doing is the one-on-one fighting, then focus on the one-on-one fighting. You know, don't put me into gank situations where, okay, there's...
So you would prefer it if Neo was like a Dead or Alive sequel?
I would prefer it if it would just do the strength of its combat system. This is the reason I don't like Bayonetta and the reason I didn't like Ninja Gaiden after like the first 2 levels. They start throwing enemies at you that seem counter to the combat system that they've created. Like Bayonetta is a combo crazy game where you're like doing crazy summon attacks, and then you start fighting enemies that just flat out ignore your attacks, so it becomes like hit them a few times then run away. And it's like, well, wait a minute. The combat system was built around all this stuff. The game that I think does that really well, and everyone hated, but now everyone seems to love, is DMC Devil May Cry, where that game was built around pushing and pulling enemies, and every combat scenario was built with that in mind. And that's why
okay, I get it. So you wish this was Ninja Theory and not Team Ninja.
I wish that...
I almost always wish that.
Well, true.
I sometimes mix those two companies up, and I feel bad every time.
But what Metroid fans also feel that way. Oh,
oof. But what I wish is that, like, if you're good, if the thing you got going for you is one-on-one combat, then why like put you into nasty like one-on-one combat in an open area where the camera can't get stuck? Then why like put me into a room with like 3 guys, or like, hey, it looks like I'm gonna fight this Oni enemy, but there was this other enemy in the back that suddenly got involved in the fight and now I'm fighting 2 guys at once. Like, don't do that. Like, or at least give me enough stones to throw at the enemy to lure them out. That started to become a real pain in the ass. Like, it could all be...
I was just charged in.
Yeah, see, and I've just given up on charging in on this game. Like, and just the level design to me is really not very good. Like, again, it's a demo. I get that, but it's funny because when Steven came on in the pre-show recording, I talked about how I feel like I'm the odd man out because a lot of people on message boards are talking about how much they love this game. Steven feels the opposite. Like he's the one, he's the odd man out.
Well, no, I think there's a very broad reaction to the game, and I think that makes sense. I actually feel like people are being fairly open to it, but also very vocal that it has ways to go. But the game's pretty far out, and I mean, when we had a Final Fantasy 15 alpha demo, it looks nothing like the game does now, and plays substantially different. Like, So like for me, if it's an episode Duske versus platinum demo current FF15 type scenario, I think that they have plenty of time to tighten it up because I think this combat system is a lot more fun than episode Duske was before all the changes they made. So I think they have a good foundation, but there's definitely room to go. Like I would, if I had paid for this right now and it was in this state, I would probably be like,
Yeah, I think you're being. I think maybe the reason why my anger is a little bit higher on this game is that I really was looking forward to this ever since the TGS demo. Like, it blew me away with what I saw. Looked super impressive. Like, I liked the combat system. It looked like it was really fun, fast, and fluid. But then I started playing it, and I was just like, ugh, I don't really. And I think the other thing that gets me is it does the Dragon's Dogma thing. It really does. Where like this enemy doesn't look any different than the ones I previously fought, and all of a sudden he's doing way more damage to me. Like that was the Dragon's Dogma thing of like, okay, this guy is apparently he has better equipment, but I had no idea of that until I started fighting him, and I took one hit and died. Okay, now I got to get better equipment. Okay, now I can fight you. Okay, fight through a couple more guys. Oh, I got to another guy that does a stupid amount of damage. All right, now I got to get more. Does this game have to be a loot game? I think that would be one of my questions. Is like, does it need to be a loot game? I don't. It's kind of the same feeling I had with Darksiders 2. Like, I feel like the loot is taking away from this game. Like, I don't want to have to be fiddling through menus to find the katana that is less broken than the other katanas.
Do you think part of the reason they include that loot system is because the weapons are all fragile and you may need to, keep shuffling in new katanas because the ones you use keep getting broken?
Well, my point would be just get rid of the weapon durability. Like at this point,
Right.
at this point, Souls has basically gotten rid of weapon durability because when you rest at a bonfire, your weapons all recharge. So
Yeah. On a similar note, Fire Emblem Fates, which came out a few weeks ago in North America, got rid of weapon durability for everything except for like a few legendary weapons, and it was so awesome not having to worry about keeping enough iron swords in your inventory anymore.
Yeah,
It
that was
was
a good change.
yeah, the more like it just got rid of a lot of the stress of the game, and seeing how much I enjoyed it made me think, does any game ever need weapon durability, really?
I don't understand why Diablo has weapon durability. I mean, I don't like, and
All it means is that, yeah, you're just paying 80 gold every time you go to the blacksmith. It's totally meaningless.
Right, right. And Souls has done away with it for the most part. I mean, there's still mechanics where like certain enemies will break your equipment and then you'd have to go back to the blacksmith and repair it. But for the most part, it's gone now. And so as I'm playing Neo, I'm like, okay, if you want to have a loot system, that's fine. But like, think about how long it took Diablo 3, and this is a point in Neo's favor. Think about how long it took Diablo 3 to find a really good balance of loot so that you weren't just getting vendor trash all the time and like actually give the loot some meaning and make it special. It took them like a year of development after the game was released. So it's very hard to get that loop right. I almost feel like just take it out of Neo. Like just honestly remove it. But maybe it's something that really does open up the further you play with it. I don't know. I just, I think in terms of demos, it's really hard for me to imagine people that were turned off to the Souls series. Like Derek, I think you're a prime example. It's hard for me to believe like you would play this game and go like, yeah, this is the one I want to play. Like I could see you just going, well, F this. Like this is everything about the Souls series that you don't like.
Yeah, I think. I guess I don't know. We talked about this before, but I think the only thing that could really get me into a Souls game would be like a sci-fi setting. I would try that. What's the name of that one that's coming out?
That's The Surge by the guys who made Lords of the Fallen, and the first video for that looked okay. That's a terrible title,
okay.
but
I just think that's the gameplay loop structure format, whatever you want to call it, doesn't appeal to me.
Yeah.
I mean, like I've tried several. I mean, repeatedly, and I maintain that Bloodborne was way more what I am interested in than Dark Souls style stuff. Like, because I've been watching my roommate play Dark Souls 3 for the last week or two, since it came out, whenever that was. Watching him play tons of it, and it's just like, nah, this isn't really my thing. So I don't think Neo is It doesn't sound like the fix that I would need to enjoy that series.
And again, maybe this game, when it comes out, like I fall instantly in love with it, and there is something appealing here. Like there really is. That one-on-one combat, I haven't felt something like that since Bushido Blade. And I remember me and my buddy Brian playing Bushido Blade, and we had no idea how to make that game work, but man, did we have fun running around like idiots just chopping at the air. Like there's something really cool about that style of game. I hope that they listen to the criticism of, here's the thing you're doing well, maybe focus on that. Like, maybe focus on that one-on-one combat. Maybe make those encounters really impactful instead of like, oh, here's two mook enemies and I'm just going to cut them apart real quick. Why not just put a guy there that's maybe a little bit tougher and take away some of the surrounding trash? Make those encounters a little bit more intimate. Make them a little bit more meaningful. I think that might be what I kind of want from Souls, and maybe Bloodborne was going in that direction of like, less, here's 13 enemies to fight in a row that are all really the same, and more like, here's one or two hard-ass dudes. Have fun. Like get through them.
I mean, I'm not a Souls guy really either.
You're off the show, Mike.
I know. Well, I mean, that's why I barely said a word during your whole Neo discussion. But I'm almost surprised that we haven't seen more games like Shadow of the Colossus over the years, where there's only 16 enemies, but they're all these dramatic, awesome, varied boss encounters.
Sure, I'd be down for that.
Yeah. Would you play a Souls game where there was maybe just, say, 20 enemies total, but they were all bosses that were awesome?
I think it would have to be a very differently structured game. Obviously, like you'd probably get rid of your loot system. You'd have to make like a whole lot of changes. But the idea of encounters that are a little bit more impactful is really, really important to me. Like, I think that's one of the things we saw with Dark Souls 2, which was, more bosses, but not necessarily better bosses. And I think that the enemy design in Bloodborne to me is more special than what was in Dark Souls 3. Although having played Neo, I'm much higher on Dark Souls 3 now, because it's like, oh, maybe I did have too much of a good thing, and I kind of got mad about eating chocolate chip ice cream, and then you made me eat asparagus, and I had to remember how much I hate asparagus. So, like, maybe that's what happened there. But I think that the idea of make a game that's a little bit more focused on those intimate encounters. And I think Lords of the Fallen was trying to get there a little bit. Like those, you don't really fight mobs of enemies in that game. Like that game had lots of problems, but mobs of enemies was not the big deal. So I don't know. I hope Neo gets there. I think they have something special, but I would just really like it if they would focus on the strengths of their mechanics instead of kind of fitting it with vestigial things or making slapdash level design and encounters. Because some of those encounters just feel like crap. Like it's not fun to be on top of a building, the roof caves in, and you land in front of three dudes who just get up and attack you and you die. Like that, like when the Souls games do that sort of thing, which is very rare, I call BS on that. And I think that's where this game is. Well, what did the director of this game call it? He called it a dying game.
No, thank you.
Yeah, that sounds like you listened to the marketing hype of Souls and didn't actually listen to what a Souls game actually is. And that's concerning. If this game is already throwing this much BS at me at the very start, can you imagine where they're going with it? Like, think about how like much BS there was in the Ninja Gaiden games, like dudes that threw exploding shurikens at you from off screen. Like, I kind of shudder to think about what's waiting in the wings for this game, but
Yeah, well, to Mike's other point about like there haven't been many games like Shadow of the Colossus that really focus on sort of singular experiences, is because that's harder to do from a design standpoint. Right?
Sure,
it takes more creativity and it's easier to just throw a bunch of enemies at you. So
yeah, it takes more craft it would take more craft to make each boss feel meaningful. And if you didn't do enough of them, the game would feel like too short. It's Shadow of the Colossus is a really special game. It's one of my favorite PS2 games, and because of that challenge and the difficulty in designing a game like that, I guess is why we haven't really seen much else like it.
Yeah. So, my preview's up on the site. I put a thing on our message board of, the Ren and Stimpy, no sir, I didn't like it. And I didn't like it, but it might end up getting there. It's definitely a game I want to see again in a couple months. I think that, it takes a lot of chutzpah from a developer to release a game in an alpha state this close to E3. I'm impressed that they were able to do it. Let's see what the final version of the game is. Maybe it ends up being my favorite game of the year, but
It comes out and it just pops up on the screen, Dark Souls 4, Japan.
Japan Souls. Makes me really want another Onimusha. I
think you did. You mentioned on other podcasts how you love setting low expectations and seeing them being exceeded.
I do.
Maybe that's your wish for this game, I guess.
I think my
Superman, and then they were destroyed.
Yeah, I had lowered expectations for Batman v Superman, and it still smashed away my childhood. Okay, so that's Neo. Please look forward to it. I could see that game being delayed to 2017 in a good way. I don't mean that as like a problem. I mean that as like, if the feedback on this game, if they actually are listening to it and they say, hey, maybe we should change some of this stuff, it could get there. Plus, I think 2016 is also kind of nuts right now as it is.
Jam-packed, man. There's so much.
I would push it back. I would, honest to God, push this game back because I think it gets lost in the shuffle right now. Like,
I don't think I want to be the game that's not Final Fantasy Persona 5 this year.
Yeah, right?
Yeah.
That's why I'm okay with the NX being pushed back to next year. Like, please, by all means, I have enough going on.
Yeah, there's too many games right now. Like, I was just looking at the release calendar and going, oh, dear God. So, yeah, Neo, cool. Briefly, I have a question about Danganronpa 2 for the people that have played it. I think that's Mike and Derek. Is it just me, or maybe not so much in the second case for Danganronpa 2, but the writing in the first case felt... I was getting really confused. I was getting very confused with like what was going on in the case. I was missing some of the logic bumps. And then when the game explained its minigames to me, I did like an honest to God, hold on. What did you just say? Like, I feel very weird about Danganronpa 2 right now. It's starting to ramp up, and I'm getting into it again the way I got into 1. But I felt some real big logic holes when I was playing the first game. Like, at one point in the second case, and this is maybe a little bit of a minor spoiler, but it's one of the first... like,
as long as you don't mention who the killer is, I think.
Right. It's one of the first like truth bullet sections where the thing that you have...
Ethel Beavis did it.
No, you have to imply that the murder weapon was a swimsuit filled with gravel from a broken fish tank.
Right. I think I actually may have gotten a game over during a section near there because I was supposed to click on the swimsuit, and I kept thinking that the murder weapon was like a part of the fish tank or what would smash the fish,
right?
What smashed the fish tank, and it's I basically agree with you in that there's some confusing leaps of logic, and just the cases are just more convoluted in general compared to the cases in Danganronpa 1. So I still like Danganronpa 2 more than 1 because I like the newer gameplay elements that they add. Like
really,
I like that racing thing that they do sometimes. I think they fixed the sections where you have to sort of collect letters. I thought those were done better. And I really like the manga, like fill in the blank sections at the end of each case.
Okay, let's talk specifically about that manga thing because it was funny that the game. It's funny that the game said if you played the original game, this is probably going to confuse you. Don't worry, you'll figure it out. So like I thought that you had to use each panel that they gave you in each set.
No, they change them up. Yeah.
So I was completely bewildered at that point of just like, what in the world? Like, I don't, none of these fit. What am I supposed to do? And like, I failed that section and then I tried it again and I was like, let's go with the assumption that you don't have to use all of these. And it started working. But I found it very interesting that there was a tutorial tip of you might have a hard time with this if you played the previous game. That was... Was that an admission by the developers of, yeah, maybe we didn't explain this as well as we could have? That and the cutting minigame, I still don't understand how that works. I don't get that. Like, am I just cutting every piece of line that they deliver until the one bit of logic, and then I use the ultimate. I don't know.
Sort of, but you try to have your slashes do as much damage as possible by having them at the appropriate angle, and that helps it a little.
I'm only
bit.
using the D. I'm only using the D-pad on those.
Are we still talking about Danganronpa?
Yes, we are. Yeah, it is really.
We're talking about Neo again.
No, we're talking about Danganronpa. Trust me.
It's there is a like samurai sword slashing mini game. Like in Danganronpa 1, I think there was only maybe 3 mini games that you use to get pieces of evidence during the trial segments, and in Danganronpa 2, there's 5 or 6.
Yeah.
And part of why I liked 2 better was because they like made the rhythm games parts of it better, and they added more variety to the type of games you play. And because I found those a little bit monotonous by the end of Danganronpa 1. But yeah, in general, the leaps of logic stuff and the cases getting more convoluted gets really strange. I thought it was the one part of Danganronpa 2 I really didn't like was the 4th case, because the setting stinks, and I did not understand 1 or 2 of the spots I was supposed to click during the Truth Bullet segments. And I didn't really come close to rage quitting, but that was when the game really hit a low point, even though it ends strong.
Yeah, I kind of feel the way that I felt when I played the first Ace Attorney. I wanted to bring this up because Steven's been yelling at me to play the full Ace Attorney trilogy, and I'm pretty close to buying it on 3DS to just do it.
Yeah, that's because I'm a good friend.
I know you are, and I really appreciate it. You have me do good things. You are a positive enabler. But like,
see,
in the first Ace Attorney, like, you could only make a few mistakes before like you ended up losing a case, and some of the leaps in logic in that game just made me say, okay, I'm going to approach this game like a book, where I'm just going to keep a walkthrough over here, and I'm going to try to figure out the logic on my own. But if it ever looks like I'm going to fail this game, no, screw that. I'm not dealing with it.
Also, you should just make a save, like even the way I played, because the first one and the second one do that. The third one's much better.
Yeah,
but like it's very much the case where just make a save, and if you fail, just load your save.
I know.
But I definitely popped a walkthrough open a couple of times when it was a particularly convoluted thing, because again, it's also part of the development of the story.
Do we think that that's part translation, or like I guess I'm fascinated by it, like in terms of is it a translation thing?
I think, I mean, in my opinion, because I've played about half of 3 now in Japanese, which 3 is obviously the best one in the original trilogy and the most refined in terms of like making things follow a set of logic that is comprehensible to the player.
I think 3 is the best one in all 7 Ace Attorney games.
Okay.
Yeah, so keep going.
Yes. But like I don't, at least in the case of Ace Attorney, I can't really speak to Danganronpa. I think I find that the localization is quite tight, because they also revise a lot of the situations from Japanese to English. Like sometimes the particulars are a little bit different because of how heavily localized the game is. So I don't necessarily think so, because it's still the same trigger you're always looking for, you know?
Yeah, I just wonder with Danganronpa, like, I felt like there was only one case in the first game where I got really screwed up. I think it might have been the second case, but then after that I started to gain a lot of confidence, and maybe I was just thinking correctly, but like, the first game just really did not I don't like the setting as much as the first game. Like, I don't like the tropical island setting. There's something lost with the real claustrophobia of the first game that I really liked. I like the characters. I think they're all, stupid fun, and I like that in a very positive way. But something feels a little off with this game, and I'm kind of wondering if maybe the further I get into it, if I'm going to enjoy it as much. I'm kind of committed to it at this point, to finishing it. I've also started watching the anime of the first game, which is such a good thing for people that need a refresher in Danganronpa 1, but I wouldn't recommend it for people that haven't like played the game, because they do like just bulldoze through characters and events to the point where like the killer in the first case I think has like 7 lines of dialogue in the entire series before he's convicted. So it's like, okay, I'm not emotionally invested in you at all. I guess we can just kill you. Like, it's weird. It's a cool series, and I'm excited to see where they go with the third one. And I'll probably have more to say as I finish up the second one, but it's interesting. Steven, I think you should give it another try, and I said that when I finished up Danganronpa 1. I felt the same thing you were feeling, And one point I will put in 2's favor is I think 2 has a much faster start. Like, much faster.
I'm sort of being a little hypocritical when I rail on Danganronpa for having a slow start that I didn't want to get through, because I think Phoenix Wright 1 and both 999 and VLR have really big info dumps at the beginning. So I'm essentially admitting to being unfair. I just really hate the art design in Danganronpa. At least, all right, let me rephrase that. That's not fair. When I start Danganronpa, it's like, look at all of our tropes. And then I'm like, yep, look, it's the fat guy who likes to eat. Wow, that's original. Oh, look, it's the beautiful woman who likes being beautiful. And I know literally everyone has said that the game makes itself on subverting those tropes, but I'm terrible and haven't gotten past it yet.
Well, I disagree with you in that 999 and Phoenix Wright don't have the same problem, because in every Phoenix Wright game they throw you right into a trial at the beginning against Winston Payne, of course.
Okay, yes, that's true. Phoenix Wright is awesome. So
and in 999 they throw you in a room that's filling up with water slowly right at the beginning. They start the game with
so they do that, but then they do flashback during that puzzle to other stuff, and then you get into the hallway and there's like an hour of like, what is this watch doing? Oh god, it's gonna blow up.
Yeah, no, I mean, there are lengthy info dumps at the beginning, but still, those games do begin with an exciting gameplay segment, and Danganronpa is all dialogue for like an hour and a half, even though someone gets murdered in the first like hour of Danganronpa 1.
Yeah, but like it's all dialogue, and it's all your incredibly bland JRPG protagonist of like, I'm an average dude. Everything about me is average. Here are all these people who aren't average. I've seen that in every anime.
I'm not disagreeing with you. I think that Danganronpa gets worth it once you get into the action. But I'm not gonna tell you to play 2 hours of a game that you won't like if that's a deal breaker for you.
For point of reference, Danganronpa, the animation, the main character is voiced by Shinji Ikari, and I found that to be awesome. Like the voice actor for Shinji from Neon Genesis is the voice actor for the main character. He's less whiny.
I was acting in Evangelion, so
you've never what?
Can't help you, Tom. Never heard the English voice acting for Evangelion.
Oh, no. It's the Japanese voice actor. I'm watching it subtitled.
Oh, really?
And I was going to watch it dub, but then I realized that they didn't have the same voice of Monokuma, and I was like, nope. Like, if you don't have the voice of Monokuma in the anime from the video game, I don't want to listen to it.
Wait, are you watching it a dub or in Japanese?
I'm watching the subtitled Japanese.
Yeah, they had to change the voice actress for Monokuma because it's a very, very famous voice actress in Japan who was the voice of Doraemon in the 80s or 70s even, and she's actually, I think she's suffering from Alzheimer's or something. She can't work anymore, and part of why Danganronpa was a surprise hit in Japan was because Doraemon, practically the Mickey Mouse of anime, was voicing this homicidal bear, which is frankly hilarious. And but she can't work anymore, and she's not voicing Monokuma in Danganronpa 3 either.
Well, I was more speaking to the English voice actor for Monokuma, who I think does a fantastic job. Like, he is so delightfully awful. And when I fired up the anime today, I was like, oh, I'll listen to the dub if it's the same voice actor for Monokuma, and it's not.
All right. I missed it.
Yeah. It's very, and I know that's so strange, but like I would have listened to the entire thing in English if it had Monokuma's voice actor, because he's just so awesome with all of his bear puns. And also, I really love the music whenever Monami comes on stage. I don't know why. I like J-pop. It's one of my, like, speaking about Bayonetta again, that version of Fly Me to the Moon, I could listen to that all day in the car, and that's like my guilty pleasure. I think it's probably the reason why I liked Barbie Girl as a child, and I should really stop admitting this stuff on a podcast.
Are you a Barbie Girl, Rob?
In a Barbie world.
Worry about.
Life in plastic. It's fantastic. Okay.
I'm probably asking the wrong crap here, but RuPaul's Drag Race is a thing.
Oh, Jackie watches that. I don't, but
I watch it every week.
What?
RuPaul's Drag Race. It's
I understand one of the words in that sentence.
You don't know who RuPaul
I don't like
is?
cheap queens.
Oh,
Yeah.
oh, yes.
No, it's. I was just gonna say Trixie Mattel is one of the drag queens that has been on that show, and she's one of my favorites. Super, super funny, huge gamer. And Trixie Mattel's thing is like Barbie girl, IRL kind of thing, like ridiculous makeup that doesn't look like an actual person, and which is why I love her so much. Okay, sorry, go on. That's it.
I guess the only other thing I have to talk about is I beat Dragon Quest IV on 3DS. Well, the DS version of Dragon Quest IV on my 3DS.
You beat it for 3DS.
Have you done
You beat
this?
something for me.
Go ahead, Mike.
Have you done the second ending that's new to the DS version?
No, I don't think I'm going to. Honestly,
Dude,
I'm probably not. I kind of had my fill because the last boss had like 7 forms and was kind of obnoxious to fight. So I was kind of like, okay, I'm good. Like I got my fill because I feel like I played the original game, which is all that I was really looking for, and I wanted to get into Danganronpa 2, so it was like, okay, but is the second ending that worth it, Mike? Should I do it?
Dragon Quest IV was my first Dragon Quest game on the NES ages ago when I thought it was Dragon Warrior 4, and I didn't really understand how at the end how Zaro was I think it's Sorrow now, but they used to be just Sorrow on the NES. How he was sort of a tragic figure, and in the post game of the DS version, you're allowed to sort of. Should I spoil it? Doesn't really matter.
I would just say that there's another ending that.
Sure. Okay.
Yeah, just say that.
There's another ending with a different final boss that subverts the tragic part of the ending of the original game in a way that I thought was interesting. Plus, it gives you a new character to play with that's kind of overpowered, and that's fun. And but I liked it as a fan of the old Dragon Quest IV game. I really like Dragon Quest. And when we got 4 Dragon Quest games in a row on DS, I was just bouncing up and down on my couch every time I was playing those. I was so happy.
I really liked playing it, and I really want to play 5 now because I was able to pick that up. I don't know how it happened, but like Amazon had like all of a sudden all of the Dragon Quest games on 3DS again.
Well, no, on regular DS. Not
Yeah,
3DS.
I keep saying 3DS. I'm sorry.
Yeah, but
they must have found like a shipment that just had never been put out.
They did. Basically, I think that DS games are sort of ending their production run totally. So there's a lot of games that used to be hard to find that are now suddenly on sale for $15 or $20. I just got copies of 4 Heroes of Light and Nostalgia for $10 each because people they're just clearing inventory on DS games. Yeah,
Nostalgia wasn't bad.
Well, look, I'm still curious. I'm nostalgia curious. But anyway, I think if you go on to Square Enix's main site, they sell each of the DS ones for 15 or for I think it's 20 now, even though their shipping will probably bring it up to 90. But yeah, I mean those remakes on DS are really good. They increase the party size in Dragon Quest V from 3 to 4, which sounds like not a big deal, but it's a huge deal. And it's the first time that non-Japanese are allowed to play 5 and 6 legally, and they're all really good games. 5 is my favorite. Whatever, play them if you can.
They're good, yeah.
I'm really enjoying 4. I wanted to take a little break, but it was good. Derek?
Rob, I admit that I was wrong because I think that based on the fact that you have beaten Dragon Quest 4, you do want Dragon Quest 7 on 3DS.
You're damn right I do. I am
just giving you hell for nothing.
I am really excited for Dragon Quest 7. I find those games so charming with the enemy designs and all the puns. And
like the stories are simple, but they're like cute little fairy tales.
Yeah.
Instead of convoluted, weird sci-fi stories. And even though the gameplay is simple and the story is simple, it's all really sort of clean and fun. And
I would say it's genuine.
I like them all.
A big part of
yeah.
it.
I think
they have a genuine spirit to them that I just always like.
My prediction, having played a little bit of Dragon Quest VII on 3DS, is that we are going to be making the exact same comments about that we made about Xenoblade on 3DS, because boy, is it ugly on 3DS.
Is it really?
Yeah, it's the draw distance is way lower. The textures are terrible.
Well, I mean,
it's not like it's certainly.
You mean 8? You mean 8?
Yes, 8.
Okay,
Sorry, wrong
okay,
one.
because 3DS 7 was made for the 3DS after the PlayStation 1 version, but
Right. Yeah, no, sorry, wrong one. I always
okay.
confuse those two.
Well, now I'm
But
upset
you're,
because I
you're
was
going to be
looking.
right about that. I agree
The
because
three,
I've seen screenshots of that and it doesn't look good.
Like, you know,
well, the 3DS version of 8. Sorry, go ahead, man. Sorry.
for me, no, it's okay. For me, I would rather play 8 on my 3DS because it's mobile. That's about it. Unless
I'm
they release it on PlayStation 4.
Well, that would be cool. But the 3DS version adds 2 playable characters and 2 weapon types, and a
Mm.
bunch of more monsters for that quest. And it adds a bunch of stupid side stuff that you'd expect them to add to a remake. And because I only played 8 once, like over a decade ago, and really liked it, if like 8 coming out on the 3DS with extra stuff 12 or 13 years later sounds like something I want to do, surprisingly.
Yeah,
But
I could play it again. I could play it again. I'm just a little. I was saying this when we were getting ready to record, but like playing Dragon Quest IV on the 3DS was like. I really like playing a JRPG where there's a lot of grinding on the go, like mobile, like putting something on in the background. Like I was watching Dragon Ball Z Abridged while I was playing Dragon Quest IV, and like if Digital Devil Saga, for example, came out on the Vita, I would probably sit down and play it more readily than I would like unpacking my PlayStation 2, hooking it up to the TV, sitting down in front of the TV and like there's something about like grinding in a JRPG that I'm not opposed to, but I'd rather have it mobile for
Yeah.
whatever reason. I can't. Maybe it's because I can
Well,
close it. Maybe it's because I can like walk away from it and I don't
right.
have to completely refire the game up.
Yeah, grinding is the kind of thing that's more palatable when you can do it in shorter bursts and or while you're multitasking. And I think a portable system is the perfect platform for that because, like you said, you can just put it in sleep mode if you need to walk away.
I mean, I've been.
That's a large part of why I was able to grind so readily in Bravely Second is just because like this is mobile. Also, that game has awesome auto battle features.
Yeah, it does. I mean, Bravely Second and Dragon Quest games, and for me, the king of them all is probably the Disgaea games. Those are my podcast games. You throw in
Yeah.
a podcast, put the game on silent, do whatever, walk around your house, sit wherever you want, and just grind a few meaningless levels while you concentrate on what, Mark Maron or Rob Steinman is saying.
Oh God, that Rob Steinman kid. Yeah, and it, I would probably, and I think this is why I'm so excited to play the new version, SMT4 Apocalypse when it comes out, is because I had a ball with SMT4. Like that was just sitting on my couch playing the crap out of that game. Like, okay, time to walk the dog. I'd just close the 3DS real quick, take the dog for a walk, come back, pop it back open. Like, there was something about like trying to play Digital Devil Saga of like, I got to turn on my PlayStation 2. I've got to wait for it to load. I've got to start grinding again. And I know how stupid that sounds, but I'm telling the young people who are listening to this podcast, when you start getting older and time becomes a premium, that will actually affect your gaming habits. Like just waiting for like menus to load correctly and like, okay, I actually want to play this game right now. Like I've got 15 minutes before Jackie gets home. I could like play a little bit of Dragon Quest IV, or I could wait for like 5 minutes for Dark Souls 3 to load. I'm probably going to play Dragon Quest IV. And like, hey, she wants to go work on something for a little bit. Pop open the 3DS again. Like, there's just the mobile platform is so good for JRPGs, and it's actually making me like think maybe I end up getting Dragon Quest XI on the 3DS, even though the PlayStation 4 version is going to be absolutely gorgeous. It's like, do I want that portability? I probably end up buying both because I'm an idiot.
I'm gonna get both.
I probably will too. I really like Dragon Quest, and I also think that I was spoiled because Dragon Quest VIII was my first Dragon Quest, and that is probably one of the best games I've ever played. That game is just so phenomenal. Although in terms of mechanics, can they get rid of the bag system for individual characters? I hate that. I hate screwing around with individual characters' inventories. Just stop that. It's stupid.
Stupid.
I think I would have really liked 9 if I had had people to play it with. I think I really would have liked that one.
Yeah, I had a great experience playing that multiplayer with some friends, but we never got past, I'd say, like a quarter of the game, because we would just mess around grinding, and it was fantastic. But for some reason, like the group shattered, and then I just never touched the game again.
Was that just
'Cause I couldn't bring myself to do it solo.
Was that just local multiplayer, or could you play like on?
You could do online with the DS Wi-Fi connection thing, but that's now defunct though, so you can't
Oh,
physically do it.
oh man.
Yeah.
Because I think that was like at the point where I realized Steven lived like in South Carolina with me because I was an idiot and didn't put two and two together. And that was like the last summer before I moved, and I would have like really liked to have played that with someone. Like I
You're
don't
talking
know.
about 9?
Yeah, 9. Yeah.
Yeah, that might have been I was like the one person ever who liked 9, and I think it might have been because it wasn't like the other ones. Uh, but the co-op I really liked.
I wish I had gotten to play it because I liked the game as it played, but not having any real characters was kind of a bummer for me. But
Yeah.
again, if you're playing with people, it's the Diablo effect, where if I'm playing this with other people, it suddenly gets a hell of a lot more fun.
It's just like Final Fantasy Crystal Chronicles, I think, is
Just
busted
like
as a
Monster
single-player
Hunter.
game. Yeah, well, but
Monster Hunter is never fun. What are you talking about?
I sunk hundreds of hours into a couple of the PSP Monster Hunter games, and I loved playing them with my best bud, and hated playing them solo. Monster Hunter is like pulling teeth solo. And I played through Dragon Quest IX mostly alone and got really far. I beat the story and did a couple of the legacy bosses. But I never want to play that game again. I'm basically done with Dragon Quest IX. Bring on 11. Bring on the 7 remake.
Cool. All right, Derek, you got Severed to talk to us about. Is that the game from the guys who made Guacamelee, correct?
it is.
Okay.
It has a similar art style in that it's that cartoony. I don't know what engine it's in. Is it Unity? I have no idea. But it's sort of Mexican inspired, and I don't. That may be too broad. I want to say it's like South American inspired because I don't know exactly what culture it's drawing from. But yeah, so this is Severed is a first-person dungeon crawler actually, and I wasn't sure exactly what kind of game it was back when I had first heard about it until I did some research, and it's like, okay, so this is actually it's an RPG. So you're playing as this girl. The game drops you in without any lead up whatsoever. Suddenly, you're standing in this first-person view, and you're this girl whose arm has been cut off, and you wander into this house that it appears to be your house, like maybe transported to another dimension or something. It's kind of like a hellish nightmarescape. You look in the mirror and you're like, I have one less arm. That's not good. So there's this demon that's like, it shows up and basically tells you if you can find all of your missing family members who have been kidnapped, then maybe you can go home. So you are given this sword and you start your adventure. From what I've heard, this is a pretty brief game, but the gist of it is you're trying to rescue your 3 missing family members, your mom, your dad, and your brother. And you do so by traversing dungeons in first person and fighting monsters using the touch screen to actually slice them. And this is a comparison that's probably going to make some people cringe, but if you imagine Fruit Ninja, if you've ever played that, it's just like that kind of combat in that you're slashing enemies in such a way that you have to make sure you're slicing them correctly. Like there will be enemies with limbs that you have to hit from certain angles to be able to do damage. And the hook of this game is when you fight enemies, if you combo well, you have a focus meter that builds. Once that focus meter hits max, you can cut enemies' limbs off when they die. And you actually use those
You mean
limbs.
you can sever those limbs?
Haha, yes.
That's why we keep the attorney around.
And then you attach them to your stump and use their powers?
Yeah, you graft them onto your bloody stump.
Oh, Jesus Christ.
The standard enemies, the things that you cut off of them, sever from them, are used as upgrade materials. It has like a skill tree that you can pump points into to do things like make the window for severing limbs longer because it's pretty brief. Or just do more damage if you do a longer swing, like if you swipe your finger a further distance, it does more damage, that kind of stuff. Upgrade health.
Are you playing? I'm sorry to interrupt. Are you playing this on an iPad or is it a 3DS Wii U?
It's a Vita game. Sorry if I didn't say that.
Oh, okay.
This is a Vita exclusive, only for Vita.
Oh, weird.
So, right? It's like those exist. So, yeah, so as you progress through the game, it has shades of Mega Man in that whenever you defeat a boss, you get some part of them that you put on your body and use as a new power-up. So the first boss that you defeat, you get like a Mask of the Crow or Mask of the Bird or something like that. That lets you do a blind spell that will temporarily, it freezes, it's called blind, but it freezes enemies. So if you're having a hard time killing one to see its weak spot, it'll freeze it temporarily. And it also opens certain passages with like this eye icon on it. And I forgot to mention that in battle, so battles, everything's first person. Battles are as well, obviously, because you have to slice the enemies, and it takes on a slightly puzzly angle because when you're in battle, you'll get surrounded by enemies, and you have to move your perspective between the enemies and attack them before they wind up for attacks. Because the flow of battle is you're either attacking them or you're dealing with them. You're parrying their attacks and counterattacking. So they'll have tells like you'll see an enemy's arm turn red. It'll turn red, and then he'll swipe from the right. So you have to swipe against it to deflect his attack, and then you can start hitting them yourself. You can't see it, but I'm like wildly gesticulating with my fingers.
Okay, is this like an active time thing where so it's not really turn based. You have to just keep checking every enemy to.
Yeah, it's
okay.
100% real time. Just think Fruit Ninja, but with monsters and stats. But as lame of a premise as that sounds, it actually works super well. I think it's a really cool game. It's a very novel concept, and like I said, I've heard it's pretty short because I'm already like just under halfway through the game, and I've only put like 2 hours into it, 2.5 maybe. It's one of those cool micro experiences that seems like it is created specifically for this console. And while it could work on another touch device, I think it's super well realized on this system. If I have a complaint, it's that it's pretty repetitive, all things considered, because there aren't a ton of enemy types. Like you'll encounter more enemies as you progress through the game, but the first dungeon is pretty long. It probably took me hour and a half to get through. Think Zelda in that it has several floors with you have to get keys to open doors and flip switches and stuff to get through. All in first person though. And in that dungeon there are like 3 enemy types. But battles are not random. You can see enemies on the map. There are specific encounters, and once you kill them, they do not come back. So at least if you forget something or trying to find a mechanic in the dungeon that you missed, you can go back and do that without having to constantly go into random encounters. Yeah, I think it's a pretty cool game. It's $15 on the store right now. If you have PS Plus, I don't know how long the sale is. I want to say it's for the first week. It's 10% off, so $13.49. Yeah, it's a cool game. I didn't hear a ton about it before it came out, maybe until like a few weeks before. I picked it up right at launch, and I'm enjoying it. It's also refreshing to have such a unique setting because, like I said, it's kind of it's a strange, I'd say nightmarescape is the thing that keeps coming to mind. And it's neat to have a game with a South American influence that's consistent throughout all of the enemy and character designs. It's not your standard Western fantasy elves, dragons kind of fare. It's sort of grotesque. I wish I could think of the adjectives I'm looking for to describe this. Like the overall aesthetic is very unique in the gaming space. So it comes recommended. It's a cool game.
I really liked Guacamelee, and I do have a Vita, and like I even have a couple other Vita exclusive games. So I am interested in this. Like Guacamelee was a really neat little sort of Art Deco Day of the Dead Castle Metroid game, Castlevania Troid, whatever you want to call that.
Yeah.
So this seems cool. I might drop 15 on it, and or maybe wait for it to go on sale. But yeah, no, I'll take your recommendation, Derek. Thanks.
Yeah, check it out. It's not a perfect game. Like I said, it can be repetitive, but for what it's doing, it works very well. I guess one other complaint I have is that it can get kind of tiring to hold the system because you're moving around the dungeon with the control stick or the pad, and then when you get into a fight, you need to use the touchscreen. So I found myself shifting the system kind of into my left hand because I'm right-handed. So I shifted into my left hand and put all the weight in my left hand and then use my right to swipe on the touchscreen, which doesn't seem like it's a big deal. It's intuitive. It's just, it gets kind of tiring if you're holding it up. So I would recommend having a table to play this on so that you can set it down and not have to hurt your wrist.
Does anybody else?
Not a baby.
Does anybody else like your hands start to hurt when you use the Vita for long periods of time? I find like
I don't have a heavy system, yeah, because I have the original Vita.
Yeah, I have a hard time like figuring out hand placement. Like I think when I'm like sitting on my back on the couch, like, and I'm kind of holding it upward is when it's at its best. But I find that like if I try to sit in a chair and like angle my hands down, like I end up losing feeling in one of my hands, and it's very uncomfortable. I don't know.
I had that problem with my PSP. I don't have a Vita, but in Japan I found like this little it's like a thing that snaps onto your PSP and makes it shaped like a PS3 or PS4 controller.
Hmm.
And a grip, yeah.
And I used to get strain in my wrist all the time playing it, and it's great. And it has an extra battery.
Ooh.
Like, plug it in. It's great.
Might look for a Vita grip then.
Well, Jesse, you've been quiet for a long time, and I've heard you just squeal with delight about the Banner Saga for the better part of, 2 years now, and how I haven't played that, and Steven's been yelling at me to play it. And so you have the Banner Saga too. Tell us, is it everything you could have hoped for?
I do have the Banner.
Everything you could have hoped for, because that directly affects me.
I do have the Banner Saga 2. I enjoyed it. I don't want to say that I'm quite disappointed.
Oh,
but
no.
I think I got really into it. I got sucked in and played through it in less than a week, which, given how much other stuff I got going on, was probably not the smartest thing. But so it's very engaging. But looking back on it, it's starting to show some issues, I guess. I don't know. The problems that people raised about the combat that previously I kind of waved them away. It didn't really bother me, are starting to rear their head, because really combat is still just you knock down armor and then go after health, right? And it's a fun system, but there's not a whole lot more to it. They've added some little things, like there are now barriers on the battlefield. There are a few more enemy types. But I was kind of disappointed, because they were promising a lot when I talked to them, at PAX. Like, they were making a lot of promises about how the combat is there's going to be more variety, there's going to be more depth. I mean, there are new units, but ultimately you can just rely on your Varl to knock out armor and then knock out health. But the story is very interesting. They do a lot more world building, and you they don't tell you fully what's going on, like why the world is breaking, but they start to hint heavily at it. And so for that reason alone, I really enjoyed it, and I'm looking forward to the third one.
They were setting this up to be a trilogy, right?
Yes.
Okay. So this is the dark middle chapter.
Yeah, correct. Yeah.
Do you think maybe you knew how to play the game so well that at this point there wasn't anything that it could do to surprise you? Were you kind of looking for new mechanics to keep it fresh?
Yeah, that's probably that's a big part of it. And also I carried over one of my save files from before. And so I had, all of my beefy characters with all of these great items on them. And so I really didn't have any trouble with the combat, aside from a couple of fights that I felt were kind of cheap. But, not everyone's going to have that.
For me, I feel like the first one, actually, I really liked the back and forth of knocking armor down, knocking health down. I thought it actually made for a pretty elegant system. I did find that, particularly before they patched it, the final boss in the first one was a little excessive, in terms of an insane difficulty spike. I'm curious to play, because I definitely can see where you're coming from, in that the combat, even with the introduction of barricades and stuff, could end up being a little simple over the course of 3 games. I guess for me, that series, I've always liked the combat and felt like it tied in well, but for me, what I'm most curious about is the character level of the story, particularly in regards to the decision you make at the end of the first game and how much that impacts, the second game. And sort of the first one, one of the best parts of the first one for me was that choice you make mid-game to let those people into your caravan, and if you it's framed as the good choice, but if you do it, it's almost guaranteed that one of your characters is going to get murdered by a bandit. And I really like that sort of it challenges you in that you made what seemed like a good decision, and it's not and it was a good decision, but it had consequences. It's not the white and black of Mass Effect of do you murder the kitten or do you feed it treats?
Right.
Right.
And I found that really compelling about the first game. How does the caravan type stuff, the Oregon Trail type stuff play out in this one?
It's good. I enjoyed it, and the choice that you make at the end of the game, I'm not sure. I probably shouldn't spoil too much, but I'll say that I started out loading my game and playing as Rook leading the caravan.
Mm-hmm.
And that was sort of a similar theme. It's like he's struggling with the burden of leadership and how to keep all these people alive and blah blah blah. But you can actually then I started a second playthrough and am playing as Alette now, and who's his daughter, and so she is struggling with like how can a young girl lead in this patriarchal society, right? Where people are looking to her for leadership because of her father, basically. And so she now has to prove herself. And that's shaping up. I haven't gotten too far into it, but it's shaping up to be more compelling, more interesting, I think.
Do you find that you would say that we'll call it the character you start with, that frames the narrative pretty heavily? Like, does it feel like it's a significantly different kind of story, or is it?
It seems to, yeah, which is a nice surprise. I was expecting it to just be, the same decision trees, but with a different character portrait. But so far it doesn't, people react to your character differently. Like there's a guy who's basically the former governor of Borsgard, with the city that got sacked, and he's a complete dick to Rook, right? Because he's like, oh, you're just some commoner. Like, why should I look to you to lead when I was the governor of a city? But then when he meets Alette, he's trying to be charming. He's trying to like get, presumably, like get in her pants or, kind of win her over. And he's approaching her in a much different way than he approached Rook.
That's interesting. I'm looking forward to trying it. I had briefly considered reviewing it for the site, but I think you mostly just because I love the first one. But I think it sounds like we probably had pretty similar thoughts about the first one. So I'm excited to try this one. I could see how it could feel. So when you say not necessarily disappointing, I definitely get where you're coming from with the combat. So do you feel like when you finished the game, did it have middle chapter syndrome of like not a very distinct beginning or end, or does it end in a spot? Like I feel like the first one ends in a very good moment where they have told a complete arc.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I'm not sure if you agree with that per se, but
no, I think you're right. I think it does have a good ending, actually, and part of that is because the caravan again splits. So you also end up following the leader of a mercenary band, and that's kind of interesting because you're this mercenary leader who's leading this band that has a reputation for being ruthless and rough and tumble, and my normal inclination is to be the good guy, right? To like help everyone out. But then as I'm playing, I'm like, well, this isn't consistent with this character. So maybe I should make different choices. Maybe I should try and be more of a jerk to people. And it's actually that other split in the caravan that gives you a lot of the story exposition about what's going on with the world, why everything's all screwed up.
And I don't want to be too spoily, but do you get to keep Avend is he still there?
He's there. He's
Okay,
very
good.
important to the story.
Cool, because calling lightning down with him was awesome.
Yes. And you get to meet more Menders. There's more types of allies that do some pretty interesting things. Still not as good as just crushing everything with your Varl, but there's some good stuff in there. It's just that combat is basically the same as in the first one. So if you can get through that, or if you like that, then it's not a problem.
Solid. Well, I definitely, personally, I think Rob would love it. I've been bugging you to play it for a while because
I know
will like it.
I know. Well, you've been bugging me to play SMT Overclocked, and I have downloaded that to my 3DS, and I'm going to give it a try. So I'm going to play that probably first, and then the Banner Saga.
That game is great. There are 8 endings.
Oh, good lord!
They're like distinctly different. It's like it's like in Shin Megami Tensei where you choose a reason. So you probably won't want to go get the ending where you become a nihilist and want to punch God in the face, or maybe you will. Who knows?
That sounds like me.
It does sound like you.
Yeah, I gotta remember how much I liked Ava as a kid. Still do.
Actually, think, Rob, based on what conversations we've had about mechanics, I think you would like the battle system in Banner Saga because it doesn't pull any we're going to throw something that totally breaks the system. And as a result, I agree with Jesse that I think sometimes it can feel limiting.
Yeah.
I think you like that the game never attempts to take the mechanics to an extreme. It's always a very back and forth of yep, you damage the armor, then you damage the health. Well, I mean, I think there's a lot of strategy within that. I think when we talked about it back in the day, I may have actually compared it to chess because I think it's a very elegant system and I didn't get tired of it. But there's never, other than the final boss, which was patched to be easier, there's never a situation where the game is all the things that you've done before suddenly don't work.
Or doesn't have a giant tank that shows up, and then a Valkyria woman that starts shooting lasers at me, and it's like, wow, this is a very different game than I just been playing, and I'm dead.
Well, well, you get to the final boss.
Yeah, see that. Speaking of Valkyria,
they balance the final boss. So
I have Valkyria Chronicles on my PC, and every time I look at it, I'm like, oh, I want to play this again, and then I think back to that fight, and I'm just like, no, I think I shook a house damn near to its foundation with the rage that came off of me during one of those fights. I don't know if I should do that again. I mean, I nearly passed out. I got so mad. That's not healthy. That's not good. That shouldn't be happening. But you've been playing Valkyria Chronicles 3, haven't you, Jesse?
I have, yeah. And it's it was Japan only. Disclaimer, I'm not endorsing piracy, but I bought the game, but in order to play it in the US, you need to hack your PSP or your Vita, which is technically a violation of the Digital Millennium Copyright Act. But
thank you, attorney at law.
Yeah, hopefully the FBI doesn't come knocking on the door.
Oh my god.
But it's a pretty easy process to do, and you should definitely, if you're into Valkyria Chronicles and you appreciated the way that it translated to PSP in Valkyria Chronicles 2, it works the same. It works just as well, and you're not dealing with the high school kind of school days stuff. I don't know why they did that in the second game.
Yeah, there's a lot of high school RPGs nowadays, and Trails of Cold Steel does it well, but Valkyria Chronicles 2 did not.
Well, it's the Persona effect. That became the most popular thing, and suddenly everybody had to do it.
Yep. Well, that's been a trope in Japanese entertainment for a long time.
Oh, sure.
Sure, and I mean, you could almost help blame Harry Potter on that or whatever. But anyway, the changes in gameplay from 1 to 2 and the school setting, I didn't think did any Valkyria Chronicles 2 any favors. But Jesse, before you continue, most PSPs are region free, so you're only talking about hacking it or cracking it just to play with a patch, right?
Yes, that's right.
Okay.
I cracked it so there's a fan made English translation, which is decent. You can tell there are some areas that they were too literal or whatever. But
sure,
fans are always too literal.
Yeah.
I was able to play Monster Hunter Portable 3 on my PSP just fine with an import copy, but yeah, I never tried to patch that. So go ahead.
Yeah. And yeah, I mean, if your Japanese is good enough, then go for it. But I haven't used Japanese in like 6 years, so um,
Yeah, me neither.
it's yeah, but it's fun. I mean, it would have been better. I wish it would have been on the PS3. I guess it was a PS3 era game, because that would have been like a true Valkyria experience, whatever that means.
Yeah, and
Wait,
not
well,
a,
What's the story set up for this one? Because the first one, you're this small company in the war, and the second one, you're in this military academy after the first war. What's the story set up for
Yeah.
Valkyria 3?
So the story is that you are like the valedictorian graduate of your military academy. You're this sort of, you're not quite a hotshot, but you're a rising star in the military, and you sort of through happenstance you like kind of you like dip your toe in some other conspiracy that's going on. Like you might have witnessed something bad happening, so the upper brass knocks you down to this penal squad called the Nameless, and it's just a squad where everyone is stripped of their rank and their name, and they're sent on like suicide missions because they're seen as disposable. And the characters are very, the writing is not great, and I don't think it's just the translation. The characters so far have all fallen into very familiar buckets. And
Here's the Sundari bucket, and here's the serious guy that is a loner bucket.
yeah,
I'm familiar with these buckets.
yes. So I'm not loving that part, but I'm still pretty early on. So I'm hoping they can do something with that, and if not, then I'll just play it for the gameplay. The more Valkyria Chronicles, which is what I want.
Are you excited for the Azure Revolution, whatever that Valkyria thing that they're working on right now?
Yeah,
that thing looks pretty as hell, but it does not look like Valkyria Chronicles.
See, okay. So this is the thing. When I first saw the video for that game, and I was the guy going, "Whoa, I don't know what the hell this thing is," and there was a lot of like, "Oh, Rob, come on, it's going to be amazing," and that is, again, it might be a very good Dynasty Warriors / Final Fantasy 15-ish type game, but that game is not Valkyria Chronicles. Like it's not. Maybe that's okay.
Yeah, I mean, part of my association. Okay, go ahead.
Sorry, I was saying, to be fair, it's not called Valkyria Chronicles.
No, it's not. I mean, this would be like with Crystal Chronicles with Final Fantasy. Like it's got the Valkyria.
Yeah, it's the same. It's like Divinity Original Sin versus Divine Divinity or Beyond Divinity.
Right.
A different style of game that's calling to that same universe.
But I don't think that
in hyper-colored fluorescent lights.
I just think that when people were really excited for a new game in this, is it fair to say franchise? Is that fair to say? And I'm not being facetious. I'm not trying to be an asshole. I'm saying like the Valkyria franchise, people were really excited for a new game, and it feels like Sega. The point was right in front of them, and they threw a dart across the room and hit something else, which maybe is going to be really cool. But
you're telling me that Sega has an existing RPG franchise that people love, and so they decided to make a sequel that's nothing like the previous ones?
Okay, my heart.
They won't release
never done that before.
I'm just
look, Rob. Sega hates you, and you need to accept it. Okay, they hate you and they hate me. I love them as a kid, and they hate my love.
So Sega hates me, and Team Ninja hates me. Who loves me besides Nintendo bringing me more Dragon Quest
software?
I'm pretty sure that just says him underneath it.
Well, and also, we as we slowly shift into news quickly here, I thought it was really cool that Miyazaki-san came out and said, we have no plans to make another Dark Souls game. We're already working on a new IP, and that was like, in terms of things that I want, in terms of things that I want to hear, it's right up there with, hey, I found $1 million. Like, it's like, I want you guys to work on something different. I think Dark Souls 3 was a very competent, fun Souls game, but it's, the embers have faded. It's time to try something new. And hearing,
I get that. That's a reference.
I know, see what I did there? It's poetic.
But I think so. Not that I don't trust them, but FromSoft made a series of terrible games.
I know.
Like 2 decades before Dark Souls. Do you think they will switch back to making bad games again?
I thought you liked Kingsfield.
I do like Kingsfield. Oh wow, they did make that.
I think,
And they also made 3D Dot Game Heroes, which I really like.
I liked 3D Dot a lot.
And they made Armored Core through 500. So I suppose. All right, never mind. I take that back.
Sorry for shooting your statement full of.
Well, I didn't really like the Armored Core games that much. I felt like they were better ideas than games. Like, I want a big, giant mecha also. I'm the idiot that would buy a $200 Steel Battalion right now if you came out with a controller that was that ridiculous again. Like, I would do it in a heartbeat just because I'm a moron. And this is why morons should not have disposable income. But, like, I think that we're probably going to get something that is a dark-ish fantasy title. I think that's what Miyazaki-san makes. I don't think this next game is going to be filled with puppies and kittens, but I think he will go for a tonal shift. I think that with Bloodborne, we saw a very different style of game that some people really gravitated to. Hi, how you doing? And other people didn't. But I think that all the new that we've been looking for, they were stretching their legs out a little bit with that game, and let's see what they do. I am much more confident in them trying something new because I don't think they have anything new with the Souls franchise at this point. I mean, Dark Souls 3 is completely competent and I had a good time with it, but it is very safe. It is another one of those games. It's like after you've played Streets of Rage 1 and 2, Streets of Rage 3, you know what you're going to get, which is a boxing kangaroo. And that was really fun back in the day, but it's time for something new. Am I the only one that played Streets of Rage 3? I was expecting some kind of reaction there.
Funny.
I played Streets of Rage 3, but I played as the Electric Man.
Oh, nice. I just played Streets of Rage 2 a couple of nights ago.
Dr. Zim. Oh, boy. So, yeah, I'm really excited for that news. We've already talked about Shin Megami Tensei 4 Apocalypse. And Steven,
which is being published by Sega, so to prove that they don't hate you still.
Okay, well, the Atlas branch loves me.
They do, yeah. But that's only because they have to.
Yeah, exactly. I know. I just wanted to poke him.
I know.
Sega hates you very much.
Well, and Steven, you were saying that you felt like 4 Apocalypse was kind of addressing some of your problems with the original version of 4. Like, you kind of felt like it was a little bit task and mobile phone designed heavy. I don't want to put words in your mouth.
I personally felt like SMT4 was very checklist task heavy. Like, I felt like 3 unfolded very organically, and it could at times be obtuse, but that's part of that series. Like, being opaque as to what you should be doing at times is part of that series. It's not Digital Diddle Saga or the very heavily linear Persona. And it's not that I think SMT4 was this terrible catastrophe of a game. The combat system was great. And then the music was awesome. But I do feel like it felt very cheap and prosaic compared to it. It felt very safe. Like, Persona 4 felt like, to me, an expansion of what worked in Persona 3. SMT4 felt like they just took what worked and then decided to throw in mobile game stuff to fill in the rest.
See, I really ignored all the checklist stuff in 4. Like, I didn't find that fulfilling, so I just focused on the main track, and I really, really enjoyed 4. I mean, Nocturne did not grab me at all when I played it, but, maybe that was just wrong place, wrong time, but for whatever reason, 4 really, really got me. Should I try Strange?
I definitely agree. 4 as a game to play is much easier to progress through and not have to constantly be reading guides.
Did you just say that I like easy games? Did you just backhand me there a little bit?
No, I said it's not obtuse.
I remember...
It's the difference between Phantasy Star 1 and
4.
Final Fantasy 6.
Yeah.
Rob Stevens is saying that he thinks you're cute.
I know. I still own Strange Journey, and I love the setting of Strange Journey, but I hate the dungeon crawler. I really don't like first-person dungeon design. I really, really don't. And that game really turned me off. That game is also stupid hard when you first start it. Like, oh my
I
god.
know, like Severed.
Yeah, I know. I couldn't make it past the second hour of that game. It's like, nope, this game's gonna make me furious.
That game just curb stomps you at the start. Like, whew.
The music and obviously, of course I'm commenting on this. The music in Apocalypse is fantastic. It's the 4 is very like industrial metal type music. It's sort of a fusion of SMT3 with this new flavor, I feel like. Whereas Apocalypse is very classic SMT, like really nasty guitars and like very dark, grim, muddy sounds. And it creates a really cool vibe in that game that I don't think 4 had. 4 felt a lot because of the derpy art design of the characters. I hate the art design in 4 for the characters. They just look so not as cool as Kaneko's designs.
Are both of those games Meguro soundtracks, or is it other guys in the Atlas Sound team?
Other guys in the Atlas Sound team for 4, and then I think it's one of them for Apocalypse. I can't remember exactly, but it's not Meguro. He might have contributed a few tracks.
It's Ryota Koduka.
Yeah, that's what it was. Yes. And then I think Apocalypse is Koduka, and then several other folks from the crew.
Right.
I'm looking.
It's very Apocalypse is clearly designed with their mentality was let's make one that's like the old ones.
I could listen.
Thank you. I'm into it.
I could listen to the Tokyo Battle music from SMT4 all day, every day. Like I love that.
If you like that, listen to the Polytheist Alliance battle theme from Apocalypse. So good.
Yes.
Can link that to me because I can't spell that. I'm a physics teacher.
My jam is Battle for Survival from Digital Devil Saga 2. That's killer jam.
Oh boy! If only I went to the gym more. So I guess the other news stories we have before we shut this thing down. Nintendo. It looks like the NX kind of not coming out until 2017. March was being thrown around. Was that official or was that
I think that's official. They said.
Okay.
They
I
said
think it
March.
is. Yeah.
At least before then, you got Zelda's out.
right?
The rumor was fall of this year, but then they delayed it officially to March 2017, and I think it was almost all for library reasons. That their concern was it would come out this fall, and the launch lineup would be weak, and it wouldn't have a strong holiday. But if by pushing it to March, they'll have a better launch lineup, and then more games coming in the holiday, and they're just more comfortable with that. So it's disappointing. We're not going to see it at E3 this year.
Did they officially confirm that Zelda is NX? I saw a lot of news stories about that, but I didn't have a chance to dig.
Yeah, a lot of people have been prognosticating that for
including this handsome bastard over here. And people,
they confirmed it.
I'm not saying anybody on the podcast was yelling and screaming at me, but there was like a backlash amongst like the 8-4 plays and the Giant Bomb saying that's stupid. They won't do that. I was like, they did it with Twilight Princess. Why in the world wouldn't they do it now?
Exactly. There was actually precedent for it.
Yeah, like, and I'm not saying that it's a stupid move. What I am kind of shocked by is them saying that the only thing they're going to show at E3 is Zelda. That can't be right. That can't be right.
I think that's going to be their only thing on the floor, but they'll have one of their Treehouse events either during E3 or close to it to show what they're doing the rest of this year and early next year. But it looks like the only thing they'll have on the floor is Zelda.
That is shocking to me. That is. I'm not one of these.
Is that you're going to see E3 become less and less important as years goes on because
everybody's pulling out. Yeah.
Why would you go to E3 when there's 10,000 people releasing stuff and you throw your news into the ether versus you hold your own press conference and everybody on the internet boosts it up and they live stream it and everyone talks about look at Uncovered Final Fantasy 15. That's all anybody talked about for like a week.
And how much we hated Greg Miller. That
well, that was more you. That was more you than people in general.
It was a bit me too. Yeah.
Thank you, Derek.
I do not like Miller, but I think he reined it in more than usual in Uncovered.
Okay.
And speaking of like series dedicated events, I think Persona is going to have one of those on May 5th.
It is.
Yep.
Yeah.
Steven, go to Tokyo Tower and let us know what happens.
Just stake it out.
If we don't hear from you, we'll know that you have been stolen.
I've been mind jacked.
There was a leak a few weeks ago that from a retailer that they were that there's gonna be something related to 5, not Persona 5, just the number 5, releasing from August 8 in the period between August 18th and September 30th.
I thought that was fake. Wasn't that fake?
What?
I don't know. I mean, there was like a Power Rangers joke from an old show called Five Man that was representing that release date. So like some people thought it was fake, but I don't think it was confirmed as real or fake. But that does make sense as a release window for Persona 5, so I figured I might as well bring it up.
2016 has gotten insane. Like, I can't play all these games, people.
I almost don't want that to come out this year. But,
If it got delayed, I would be fine with it.
Selfish, but like, yeah, I think it needs to give Final Fantasy 15 like at least a month per.
Yeah. I don't want those two games to blow each other out.
Problem. Yeah.
And then I've got Dragon Quest 7 and potentially 8 this year. Like,
there's all kinds of stuff coming out. Man.
There's too much. There's way too much. And here I am about ready to finish up Danganronpa 2 and then start Overclocked. Great.
Yeah.
Derek, what other news stories you got for us before I get all gushy over here?
We got two more. There's one from me, one from Jesse. So there was a presentation. There was like Final Fantasy 14 has these events every so often, the Fates, where they'll have a live conference with Naoki Yoshida, the producer, and fans and stuff. So there was one, I want to say day before yesterday, I forget, in Japanese time. So there was an event. They had a live panel where they talked about what's coming in patch 3.3 for Final Fantasy 14. It's called Revenge of the Horde. And aside from all the stuff that's coming in that patch, it looks cool. They announced a collaboration with Yokai Watch. So there's actually going to be a number of Yokai Watch characters coming to Final Fantasy XIV as minions that you can acquire, as well as one weapon for each job that features a yokai theme to it. And there's finally there's a mount that's the ghost character Whisper, and it's just like the way that I describe that is like, you guys know those cheesy swan boats that you pedal that are like the romantic dates kind of thing. It's like
I used to have to rent those out when I used to work at a lake park. Yeah, go ahead.
So it's like that, but it's a ghost and it flies and it looks really dinky. So I hope that it plays like a dinky little music box tune or something when you're flying inside of it. But yeah, it's a collaboration with Yokai Watch, which I thought was a pretty cool thing. And weirdly enough, it kind of works because Final Fantasy XIV has the minions, so they can represent all of those characters as their tiny little collectible selves. So, and then Jesse, you wanted to talk about Supergiant's new game.
Yeah, Pyre. I think it's it seems to be more RPG than either Bastion or Transistor.
Yeah, it's like Oregon Trail RPGs with the combat being basketball game rituals, and I am so excited for it.
I mean, it looks beautiful.
Yeah, the combat looks like 3v3 basketball. It's awesome. Oregon Trail and NBA Jam. I want it.
Is the game going to be so hipster it hurts?
Probably.
It's going to be on fire.
I don't think I didn't hate Bastion. I didn't click with it, but I was like, okay, this was fine. I actively disliked Transistor. Like, I don't think that's a very good game.
I wanted to love Transistor.
I did too.
I've said this a bunch of times. I think both of those games have their heart in the right place, and I think I find Bastion to be a little more honest than Transistor. Transistor is like, hey, everyone liked that guy Logan. Let's have him voice more stuff.
Yeah.
And as I wrote in the chat, I think those games hipster so hard my grandfather could break them. Like, no. I don't mean this in terms of like, oh, they're hipster games. My problem with those games is that there's so much attention paid to making it look cool that there are huge gaps in the narrative, particularly in Transistor. Transistor is a game that, like, everyone's like, it's so deep, and it's like, no, it's not deep. Just because it, like, don't get me wrong, I do think that there's merit to not explicitly stating everything in your narrative, and I think Transistor at first understands that because they're, like, giving you pieces. But then you get to the end, and it's like, all right, well, the story is sort of about nothing. And look at how mysterious it is because we didn't tell you what happened.
Yeah, that's how I felt. Yeah.
But to be fair, I did find the combat fun. But like, it's just there's this overwhelming sense of I felt like the two guidelines for Transistor were make it look really cool and take that thing that everyone liked from Bastion and have the sword never shut up.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, Transistor was like they were trying to build this atmospheric world, but they only did it piecemeal. Like they only built the parts that they were going to tease you with, and then everything else just felt incomplete.
Yeah, like that's a really good way to put it. Like, I think there's a way in which you can present parts of a world and have it still be compelling. Whereas here, it felt like they only even conceived of the parts they showed you, and then they were like, write a mysterious blog entry for this computer that talks about some aspect of society and never explicate on it. And and that's okay, but nothing. There was nothing depending on that mystery. It was just sort of like, yeah, this sounds. It's like the Final Fantasy 13 Codex. It's just there because it's there.
Yeah, I didn't like the way the game played either. Like, again, I'm kind of more focused on mechanics than anything else, and I don't want to say I found the win button in that game, but I found like the thing that worked for me, and I never felt the need to expand anything gameplay wise, and so I just found the game to be remarkably boring the whole way through, and I didn't really progress or anything. And you could blame that on me. You could say like, oh, well, you didn't feel the need to experiment and try new things, and I was like, yeah, because it was effective. Like it was. It's kind of like when I played Final Fantasy 12, the original version, it was like, if I just give all my guys maces and give them white magic, nothing can stop me, so why am I going to do anything else? Like,
well, it's the Diablo 3 argument of, don't tone things in balance, don't tone everything down, don't make the good thing worse to make it less fun, make the stuff that's less effective as good as the good thing.
Yeah, make it work. That's the design philosophy that made Diablo 3 absolutely amazing. It was like, oh, well, this skill kind of sucked. Let's not nerf everything else. Let's make that skill badass. And I was like, okay, that's a design philosophy I can get behind. Mike, it sounded like you wanted to get in there and argue with me a little bit.
Well, not really. I haven't played Transistor. I really want to, and I actually own it now. I got it I think at the Steam Winter Sale in 2015. But the part of why I loved Bastion, even with the world building and the narrator aside, was every time I got a new weapon, I would tinker with with all of the different weapons and find my favorite combination and mess around with them a lot. And I loved that part of gameplay of Bastion. So go ahead. Mm-hmm.
Oh, then you'll probably really like that part of Transistor as well, because that's what I liked about it: getting a new skill and then trying all the different combinations.
Yeah, I love that about a lot of different types of games, and it's really satisfying getting the visible progression of new skills and new weapons at least in Bastion. So I'm really interested in Pyre because I love basketball, and I think all of that Supergiants games all look cool. So hopefully I'll be able to play that at E3 when we all go in June.
Cool. Jesse, are you going to E3 with us?
Probably not. I've got a wedding that same week. So.
Oh, weddings. Is it your wedding? You don't have to worry about that.
It's not my wedding.
Yeah, see? Come on now.
Wedding.
Come on now.
One of my best college buddies.
Oh, come on. If Steven gets married, I'm not going to his wedding. He didn't come to my wedding, so I don't give a screw him.
I was in college and didn't have any money.
I invited you. I said I'd pay for you.
Yeah, to come to your wedding.
Yeah.
Money to pay. You had enough stuff to pay for. I almost had to put a coin in the square there.
Okay, all right. We got.
I think it's just you and Mike that are going to E3, Rob.
Oh God,
we're going this year.
It's going to be my first E3, and I'm excited.
Oh God, we're going to
be the first one I've missed in 5 years.
Steven's not going to be there to keep me from punching Itagaki or David Cage, and it's going to be very
awkward. Punch anyone at E3, Rob.
I'm going to try, okay, but Itagaki's going to show up in his damn sunglasses, and I'm going to have to just take him out.
Well, that's because he doesn't have any eyes. He's a robot.
Oh God, wouldn't that be frightening? Okay, we got.
I mean, he has optics.
We got to do this. We got to do this, and it really sucks, but we got to do it.
Punch Itagaki? That doesn't sound bad.
No. So unfortunately, this is going to be Steven's last podcast with us.
Yes, at least as a member of the cast,
crew,
if you will.
Very true, and I don't, it's definitely not a bad thing. His career is starting to take off a little bit, and I don't think we really want to say quite yet what all is brewing, but there's some really exciting stuff going on in Steven's life right now, and I'm exceptionally happy for him, but I'm also incredibly selfish as a human being, and not putting coins in the swear jar right now.
Let's put it that way. Leaving the site sucks. I sort of knew it would have to happen eventually, because I'm not going to talk about whom I'm doing it for whom I am doing it, but I am finally translating games. I'm having a lot of success with that at the moment. I've a few different companies I'm freelancing for now. And it's looking like there will be one or two more in the future. And that's the whole reason I moved to Japan last year to go to this language program that stole my soul and all my free time and made me have to give up on podcasts and only appear every couple of months. But yeah, it's one of those things where I probably can't be writing about the games that I could theoretically be also helping make.
Yeah, there seems to be a conflict of interest there.
Yes.
But
anyway, this RPG is really cool. I hear the guy who wrote it is a real stand-up gentleman.
but
You should purchase it.
Shut up, you so and so. Steven, I can't really express like how important you've been both to me when it comes to the site and also as a friend. And you know, this obviously isn't goodbye. Like, it's not like our friendship is ending or any BS like that. But like, this show is really gonna miss you. I think that you, Derek, John, Zach, when this show first started, like, without you guys, this show never would have kept going. And you know, it's not even work when I'm talking with you guys. It's just fun. It's like catching up with friends, and we get bitchy with each other and we have fun. And you know, this is one of those moments of like, we're getting older and our lives are moving in different directions, and I couldn't be happier for you. Like, but at the same time, it really sucks that this is your last show and you're not going to be writing for the website anymore. But you know, my hat's off to you. I'm super proud of you, and you know, we're just going to continue to bitch about video games. This is all part of our massive plan to find out who have the rights to Shadow Hearts, and we're going to make the next Shadow Hearts game. Like that's our secret plan, ladies and gentlemen. That's what we're working on right now.
I can't wait.
It's just going to be a spin-off about Joachim, and he's just going to wear a Speedo and hit people with coffins. That's all I want to make.
I've already seen that on Tumblr, man.
Yeah, I wrote it.
Well, that's a conflict of interest, Steven.
I mean, I did not write that.
I bet Sega has the rights and they're going to withhold it just because they hate all of us.
They hate us.
I feel like, you know what? Here's how I'm going to compare Sega. It's that episode of Arrested Development when they say Lucille gets off on being withholding. Sega is literally Lucille. They're like, here, have a new Phantasy Star. No, it's mine. Look at me getting off, withholding. That's Sega.
That actress is the voice actress of Archer's mother in Archer, and I think she does the exact same thing in one episode.
That's actually how they casted her too. Yeah. Also, Sega, I'm sorry if you have anything you need localized. Forgive me. I love you. I'm just mad because Sonic Boom.
Yeah, we're all mad about Sonic Boom. So yeah.
If I hear about you working on Skies of Arcadia 2, I'm kidnapping you.
No, we're all kidnapping him.
Just let me finish before I do.
Until he's done, right?
Yeah, we'll let him finish.
Yeah, let me finish it first.
I'll also echo Rob's sentiments as one of your co-hosts, Steven. It's always been a pleasure having you on the show, and it's not going to be the same without you.
Thank you very much to both of you. I'm sad. That's probably the best way to put it. I will miss talking with you guys regularly because I'm sure I can appear occasionally.
No, you're never coming back. Until you play Bloodborne, you're never coming back.
Boy, that might be a while. I've played Guild Wars and Super Smash Brothers lately, so my speed at getting through things is well, I've made it very far in those games.
I think what this means, though, is that at the next MagFest, we're going to have to try to do like a random encounter panel and just get really drunk and say stupid things on stage. I think we kind of have to do that now, right? Like,
I can call some people.
I think we need to have a panel at MagFest next year because I didn't go this year and I was very upset about it.
I don't know if all three of our listeners would come, but I do.
That's the ultimate fear, isn't it? That we would do this and like 4 people would show up and one of them would be my wife. It would just be like...
That's one more than I expected.
Look, I've been to like 8 MagFests, so I'll make some calls and I'll at least have my 5 college friends come, so that'll double the number.
I thought you like actually knew somebody and could get us into MagFest as like a panel, but
I can do that too. But
oh, okay. Well, then let's.
I was just joking about our lack of listenership.
Okay, then let's do that next year.
But one other thing about Steven departing, I've only been with RPG Fan as staff for a little under 2 years, and Steven's the one that hired me. He was my interview and the person that gave the okay for me to join staff, and for that I'm incredibly grateful and very sad to see Steven Senpai leaving, even though I think I'm a year older than Steven. He's definitely Steven Senpai. Yeah. So I want to, Steven, I have to, even though I've only been podcasting and writing with you for a little over a year, thank you for everything, man.
Of course, thank you for having interest in joining the site to begin with. Like I said to everyone, leaving sucks.
Yeah.
I will miss everyone. I mean, obviously, I'm not going to not talk to anyone. That's not the case. But, it's getting on the show and making fun of Sega and then begging them to not blacklist me with you guys will be sorely missed.
We'll see how effective that strategy turns out in the future.
Well, to be fair, I don't think they're listening to their fans anywhere else. So, oh, God, stop.
Oh man,
Oh, my God.
You can't help yourself.
This isn't gonna work. This isn't gonna work.
or maybe you're putting yourself on their radar right now.
See, that's what I am. It's like the guy who hacks Facebook and then gets hired by Facebook. I know what you're doing wrong, and it's not letting me have Phantasy Star.
Anything. Well, I think our listeners know all the details right now, which is, make sure to send us emails, subscribe to the podcast on iTunes.
Yeah, I have access because I finally got access to the RPG Fan email account because
I told you the password.
yeah. Thank you. So if you guys have any questions for us, want to have us talk about anything on the air that's context appropriate, send us an email, podcast@rpgfan.com.
How many Gold Watch emails were in that?
There were like 300.
I think they actually start combining them after a while.
It was like 9,000 emails in that box, Rob.
But like all
After a while,
spam.
you start getting like emails that are like, "Would you like a golden watch penis?" And I'm like, "Wait, what?"
I mean,
Like that's how bad the spam in that box is. I think they just put them into a word blender.
I would take a golden penis watch. That sounds like that sounds pretty
like
cool.
Shin Megami Tensei persona.
I was just gonna say.
Yeah. What kind of Google searches led to you being on their list, man?
I don't.
Team Token.
I plead the fifth. My attorney will speak. My attorney Jesse Wu will speak for me right now.
Sound of footsteps. Two other things. One is that I will be on the last. We're going to do a bye-bye episode of Rhythm Encounter, and I think we're going to try to get lots of guests. We also wanted to check with Derek if he has time. It's not a regular episode. I'm just going to play a bunch of music and we're going to talk. But
Wait,
Derek
we've been
is one of
spending-
the original creators of the show. I would love to have you on, and obviously any other guests that we've had. And second is that so one of the most difficult things I found getting into localization was finding somebody who could answer questions, not about the games you work on, because that's all NDA'd and you won't get anything out of me about that anyway. But in terms of how to get into that field, like, I think I might have taken a longer path than some because I'm terrible. But I think one of the things I promised myself I would do, and I don't know if any of our listeners have interest in this, but if anyone ever wants to ask questions about how to get into games localization or like suggestions for good ideas to do, obviously my way is not really a way, nor is it the only one of them, but I'm happy to take questions like that. And I will not talk about my work, but I want to help other people get into that field. I know of some really great Facebook groups that I was able to network with while I was here in Japan, and I know there are people in the US who work on that too. I'm not some big important guy, but I'm having a small measure of starting success, and I would like to help others who have a passion for that kind of translation and language sort of thing make that happen. So I'm happy to answer questions via Twitter. I have my actual website now. It's sjmtaylor.org or .com. I forgot. It's one of those. Just go on my Twitter. It's listed there. There's nothing there yet except for a vlog where I talk about music, which should sound familiar. Yeah, so I would love to help people if in any way I can, because I am very grateful that I am able to do this now. And I would like for others to be able to enjoy that. But if you come to me and tell me the Nintendo Treehouse sucks because they censor stuff, I'm going to ban you. I'm just going to block you. I don't want to have that conversation with you. That's dead honest. Do not want to talk about that. No, just shut up.
You haven't already gotten that, have you?
No.
Okay, I think
if I might pontificate further for a second, I think there are a lot of people who don't know anything about language and don't know anything about localization that think they know better than professionals. And not that there are not people who don't know better than professionals, particularly some companies that make bad choices, but there is a lot more that goes into these decisions than just you're censoring my ability to look at anime boobs.
I don't know, Steven. They're taking away my ability to look at anime boobs. I feel very strongly about that.
What's taking away the ability to look at anime boobs?
Pressing me.
Anime,
Press.
Stephen, every line of dialogue you change the meaning of is a violation of my First Amendment rights.
true. I should be saying, I, Kefka, as Kefka, do this. In the end, it is my solution to do this. I guess it can't be helped.
It can't be helped. I'm actually not
I guess-
Steven's far more versed in this than I am for sure because you have a master's and you're doing this as work. But I am writing my senior capstone for my bachelor's on game localization, and it is taking shape and will be done in the next couple of days. So
I would love to read it.
This is another thing I'd love to talk about. Sure. I mean, it's probably going to be BS. Well, not BS, but compared to what you know, it's probably going to seem.
It'll get you a
It'll be
B.
ready.
It's going to get you a BS.
For your BS, right?
Yeah.
It is BA, but yeah. Yeah, game
Sure,
loc.
It was
It's,
almost perfect.
hit us up.
Well, thank you everybody for listening, and Steven, I love you, you son of a bitch. I really do, and
And all the rest of you.
I know. So, thank you everybody for listening, and we'll see you all next time.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye, Stephen Senpai.
You almost got me emotional, you